You've probably heard fragments. Maybe you know about the Monkey King or you've seen dragons in Chinese art. But what you haven't seen is how all of Chinese mythology fits together into one massive, interconnected epic that makes Game of Thrones look simple. We're talking about a mythological universe that includes world creating giants, flood controlling heroes, immortal peach gardens, and the political theory that justified every Chinese dynasty for over 2,000 years. Buckle up because we're about to take you through the entire saga from cosmic birth to imperial philosophy. And by the end, you'll understand why these ancient stories are secretly the blueprint for one of history's greatest civilizations. But before we dive in, if you're new to this channel, consider liking the video and subscribing if you haven't already. It helps a lot. Also, let us know where you're watching from and what time it is. We're on to building a global community here. So without further ado, let's begin, shall we? Before the beginning, the Chaos Sea. Before the first breath of wind, before light carved its path through emptiness, there existed something beyond name or form. The ancient texts call it Hundun, the primordial chaos, a swirling, breathing void where nothing was separate and everything existed at once. Imagine standing at the edge of existence itself where time hasn't learned to flow and space hasn't learned to stretch. Hundun was faceless. The character for chaos in ancient script shows this perfectly. No eyes, no mouth, no features to distinguish one moment from the next. This wasn't merely absence, it was pregnant potential, the universe holding its breath before the first word of creation could be spoken. Chinese cosmology doesn't begin with nothing, it begins with everything, tangled and undifferentiated, waiting for the first force to pull it apart. The ancient philosophers describe this state with reverence. Hundun wasn't evil or empty. It was complete unto itself, perfect in its formlessness. But perfection without distinction cannot create worlds. Something had to break. Something had to separate. The universe needed to exhale. Within this chaos, two forces wrestled without knowing they wrestled. Yin and yang hadn't been named yet, but they were there, heavy sinking against light rising, cold pressing against warmth, stillness pushing back against motion. The cosmic egg was forming, though no shell contained it yet. Everything that would become mountains and rivers and stars and human hearts was compressed into this singular, impossible moment. Here's where Chinese mythology diverges from other creation traditions. There's no god standing outside the chaos, commanding light into being with words. There's no divine craftsman shaping clay with deliberate hands. The universe creates itself from within, breaks itself open, sacrifices its wholeness to birth complexity. This tells us something fundamental about how ancient Chinese thinkers understood existence. Creation requires transformation, and transformation requires sacrifice. The Chaos Sea wasn't chaotic in the modern sense, random or disordered. It was chaos because everything was everything else, because boundaries hadn't been invented yet. A river can only be a river when it's not a mountain. The sky can only be sky when earth has fallen away beneath it. Identity requires separation. Meaning requires distinction. This concept shaped Chinese thought for millennia. The philosophers who came later, Laozi writing in his Mountaintop Solitude, Confucius organizing the social world into harmonious relationships, they were all responding to this primordial truth. Order emerges from chaos, but chaos was never the enemy. It was the source. It remains the source, churning beneath every moment of structured existence, ready to return when the cycle demands it. Ancient astronomers watched the night sky and saw Hundun still swirling in the spaces between stars. Poets described fog settling over morning rivers as chaos remembering itself. Painters left empty spaces in their landscapes, not because they were unfinished, but because the void had to remain visible. You can't understand the mountain without understanding the mist it emerges from. The mythology that follows, every god and monster and hero, all of it springs from this foundational moment. But more than that, it reflects the eternal pattern. Dynasties rise from disorder, establish order, then collapse back into chaos so the next dynasty can rise. Floods devastate the land, and from that devastation comes the need for great engineers to tame the waters. Cosmic wars shatter heaven, and from those shattered pieces comes the bureaucracy that structures the divine realm. Chinese mythology breathes with this rhythm. Chaos and order, death and birth, destruction and creation, they're not opposites fighting to destroy each other. They're partners in an eternal dance, each one necessary for the other to exist. The universe doesn't progress in a straight line towards some final redemption. It circles, spirals, returns to its source to be born again. This matters because every myth we'll encounter carries this pattern in its bones. When Pangu splits the cosmic egg, he's not creating something from nothing. He's organizing what already exists. When Nüwa repairs the broken sky, she's not making it perfect. She's restoring balance so the cycle can continue. When the Yellow Emperor battles Chio on the plains, they're not fighting good against evil. They're embodying the eternal tension between order and chaos, each necessary, neither final. The ancient texts preserve these stories through dynasties and disasters, through book burnings and philosophical revolutions, because they weren't just entertainment. They were instruction manuals for understanding existence itself. How should we live in a universe that cycles between order and disorder? How do we build civilization knowing it will eventually fall? How do we love and create and strive when impermanence is written into the fabric of reality? Hun Dun holds the answer. Before distinction came completion. Before names came reality. The Chaos Sea teaches us that endings and beginnings are the same moment viewed from different angles. What falls apart was once put together. What gets put together will eventually fall apart. The universe breathes in and out, and we're all part of that cosmic respiration. So as we journey through these myths, from the first giant who became the world, to the monkey king who defied heaven, to the bureaucrat gods who organized the cosmos, remember where we started. Remember the faceless void that contained every face. Remember that chaos isn't something to be defeated once and for all, but something to be balanced, respected, even honored as the source from which all forms arise. The ancient Chinese didn't fear the void. They recognized it as the womb of creation, the ground of being, the endless potential from which worlds emerge and to which worlds return. Every mountain was once chaos. Every river flowed first in the undifferentiated sea. Every human heart beats with the rhythm of that first separation, when something became two things so that the universe could begin telling its infinite stories. We stand now at the edge of that telling, ready to watch as the cosmic egg cracks open and the first giant emerges, already knowing his fate. The Chaos Sea has finished its preparation. The universe is ready to exhale. What comes next changes everything, yet changes nothing, because the pattern was always there, waiting in the swirling void, ready to unfold. Pangu and the Acts of Creation. Inside the cosmic egg, Pangu sleeps for 18,000 years. The egg itself floats in the remnants of Hun Dun, neither entirely solid nor liquid, existing in that liminal space where potential hasn't yet chosen what to become. Pangu grows within this shell, his body pressing against the membrane of undifferentiated existence, until the moment comes when sleep can no longer contain him. He wakes to total darkness. No light has been invented yet. No space exists to move through. Everything presses against everything else with suffocating intimacy. Pangu reaches out, though reaching means nothing when there's nowhere to reach toward, and his hand closes around something that will later be called an axe. Some texts say it was already there, forged by the forces of creation themselves. Others claim it materialized from his will to separate, from the universe's desperate need to stop being one thing and start being two things. The first swing changes reality. The axe cuts through the undifferentiated mass, and suddenly there's up and down. Light material rises, yang ascending, becoming sky, stretching upward with newfound freedom. Heavy material sinks, yin descending, becoming earth, settling downward with satisfied weight. Between them, a gap opens. Space is born in the width of that gap. Time begins because now there's a before and an after. A moment when things were joined and a moment when they became separate. But the universe has terrible memory. It doesn't remember being two things. It only remembers wholeness, like a wound that closes itself, like water flowing back together after a stone passes through. The sky begins sinking and the earth begins rising. They want to reunite. They ache to return to the simplicity of non-distinction. Pangu won't allow it. He places his feet on the earth and lifts his hands to heaven. His body becomes the pillar that holds separation in place. Each day, the sky rises 10 feet. Each day, the earth sinks 10 feet. Each day, Pangu grows 10 feet taller, stretching himself to maintain the distance between above and below. This continues for 18,000 years, the same duration as his sleep, as if creation demands perfect symmetry, as if the universe must spend equal time united and divided. The texts describe his struggle with strange matter-of-factness. Pangu didn't complain. He didn't question his purpose or seek recognition for his sacrifice. He simply grew, pushing heaven and earth apart by the sheer fact of his existence, his body writing the first vertical line in a previously homogeneous universe. The space between his feet and his hands defined distance itself. The length of his bones taught the cosmos what measurement meant. 18,000 years of standing. 18,000 years of holding the sky away from the earth like a man doing an eternal push-up against the weight of creation. His muscles never tired because exhaustion hadn't been invented yet. His will never wavered because doubt would come later, with humans. He was purpose incarnate, function without consciousness, the first act of the universe creating the stage on which all other acts would play. Then he died. Some versions say he simply ran out of strength. Others claim he chose to end, having accomplished his task. A few suggest he transformed voluntarily, understanding that the next phase of creation required his dissolution. Whatever the cause, Pangu fell. His body collapsed into the widening space between heaven and earth, and as he fell, he became everything. His breath became the wind and clouds, the move across the sky. That's Pangu still exhaling, his final exhalation stretched across millennia, never quite finishing. His voice became thunder. Every storm that shakes the air is his last word, repeated endlessly, echoing through the space he created. His left eye became the sun, his right eye the moon. They chase each other across the sky, day following night following day, because eyes must blink, and these eyes are blinking still. His blood became rivers. The Yellow River, the Yangtze, every stream that cuts through valleys, they're all flowing with Pangu's sacrifice. His life force seeking the lowest places, irrigating the world he died to create. His hair became stars, scattered across the night sky in patterns that ancient astronomers would later read for meaning, never knowing they were reading the scattered thoughts of a giant who held reality apart. His bones became mountains. The Kunlun Range, the 5 sacred peaks, all of them are Pangu's skeleton, the structure that holds the world's shape even now. Miners who dig deep into the earth are cutting into his ribs. Climbers who summit peaks are standing on his vertebrae. The world has a body, and that body was once a being with purpose. His skin and flesh became soil. Farmers plant in Pangu's flesh. Crops grow from his decay. Every harvest is nourished by his dissolution. Every grain of rice tracing its lineage back to the giant who became Earth, so that smaller beings could eventually walk upon him and wonder where they came from. His sweat became rain. The morning dew, the monsoons that flood the rice paddies, the soft drizzle that blurs the mountains into watercolor paintings, all of it fell first from Pangu's straining body as he held heaven and earth apart. Even now, rain is the world remembering that effort, commemorating the labor that made weather possible. His teeth and bones became minerals and metals. Deep beneath the surface, gold and silver and iron wait to be discovered. All of them fragments of Pangu's most enduring parts, the pieces of him that refuse to soften into soil. When smiths forge tools, they're reshaping Pangu's skeleton. When women wear jade, they're adorning themselves with his marrow. The small creatures living on his body became humans and animals. This detail varies by text, but some traditions hold that the first living things emerged from the parasites that crawled across Pangu's skin. We are, in this telling, the descendants of his infestation, tiny beings who lived on a giant's back and survived his falling by adapting to the world his body became. This cosmology does something remarkable. It makes the universe intimate. The earth isn't some distant creation fashioned by remote gods working with alien materials. It's a body. It's someone's body. The mountains have bones inside them. The rivers have blood memory. The wind carries the breath of the being who created it through self-destruction. Chinese natural philosophy springs from this. When later thinkers talked about qi, the life force flowing through all things, they were describing Pangu's breath still circulating through the world. When physicians mapped the body's meridians, they were unconsciously echoing the pattern of rivers flowing through Pangu's fallen form. When feng shui masters read the land's energy, they were interpreting the moods and tensions of a geological corpse. More than that, Pangu established the pattern of creative sacrifice. Nothing in Chinese mythology gets made without something else ending. Gods don't create from safe distance, they transform themselves into their creations. Heaven and earth exist because Pangu spent 18,000 years growing and 18,000 years dying. The message is clear. Maintenance of order requires constant effort, and effort eventually consumes the one making it. Every dynasty would later understand itself through this lens. The emperor didn't just rule, he held heaven and earth together through the rightness of his virtue. When virtue failed, the sky fell and the earth rose, chaos returned, and a new Pangu was needed to restore the separation. Revolution wasn't betrayal, it was cosmic necessity, the universe demanding a new pillar when the old one cracked. Farmers understood it too. The earth gives food because Pangu gave his body. Harvest isn't taking, it's accepting the gift of the dead giant who continues feeding his descendants from beyond dissolution. To waste food is to disrespect the sacrifice. To till the soil is to honor the flesh that became field. Even language reflects this origin. The Chinese character for sky shows a great expanse held up by a person. The character for earth shows the ground with something standing on it. Writing itself remembers Pangu, encodes his posture into every discussion of above and below, preserves his stance in the basic vocabulary of existence. But here's the deepest truth the myth reveals. Creation and destruction aren't opposites. They're the same event experienced from different perspectives. Pangu created the world by ending himself. His destruction was construction. His dissolution was distribution. He had to stop being one enormous thing, so reality could start being countless smaller things. The universe began with separation, but it was born from a body. Order came through sacrifice, but sacrifice made the mountains solid and the rivers flow. This is the founding paradox of Chinese cosmology. The world is both dead and alive, both lost unity and gained multiplicity, both tragedy and triumph depending on which direction you're looking. Now the stage is set. Heaven and earth have distance between them. Geography exists. The body of the world lies ready for the next creator to populate it with beings who will wonder at mountains without knowing they stand on bones, who will drink from rivers without tasting blood, who will chase meaning across a landscape made from a giant's compassionate dissolution. The mother of humanity, Nüwa's broken sky. The world has shape now, but it's empty. Mountains stand silent. Rivers flow toward oceans where nothing swims. The wind moves through valleys where no one hears it pass. Heaven and earth exist, separated by Pangu's sacrifice, but they're lonely, if realms can be lonely before loneliness has been invented. Enter Nüwa. She appears in the space between, her form shifting depending on which text you consult. Some describe her as entirely human from the waist up, beautiful and serene. Others show her with a woman's head and torso, but a serpent's lower body, scaled and muscular, coiling with ancient power. The serpent form matters. It connects her to the primal forces of earth, to the cold-blooded patience of reptiles, to creatures that shed their skin and emerge renewed. She moves through the empty world, observing what Pangu created. The bones of the earth are good. The blood of the rivers flows properly. But something is missing. The world has structure without story, form without purpose. What use is a mountain if no one climbs it? What meaning does a river have if no one drinks from it or drowns in it or writes poems about its reflection of moonlight? Nüwa decides to make something new. She descends to the Yellow River where the water runs thick with silt. The mud there is perfect, soft enough to shape but dense enough to hold form. She kneels at the riverbank, her serpent tail curling beneath her, and scoops up a handful of yellow clay. Her fingers begin working the mud with divine intuition, knowing somehow what shape a conscious being should take. She forms the first human carefully. 2 arms for balance and manipulation, 2 legs for walking upright, a head positioned above the body so eyes can see farther, so the brain sits elevated like a watchtower surveying the senses. She breathes into the clay figure. Not air exactly, but something more fundamental. Awareness. The capacity for thought. The burden and gift of consciousness. The clay becomes flesh. The figure draws its first breath. It opens its eyes and sees Nüwa looking back. Then it stands, wobbles, finds its balance, takes its first uncertain steps across the mud. Nüwa watches with satisfaction. She's created company for the lonely world, made something that can witness the mountains and give them names, something that can hear the rivers and wonder where they're going. But one human is still lonely. She makes another, then another. Each one individually crafted, each one receiving her careful attention. She gives them different features, different proportions. Some are tall, some short, some have broader shoulders, some narrower hips. She's discovering variety as she works, learning that creation doesn't require uniformity. Yet this process is slow. Nüwa realizes that at this rate, she'll spend 10,000 years just populating one valley. The world is vast. If humans are to spread across all the land Pangu's body became, she needs a faster method. She picks up a rope, or perhaps creates one from twisted grass. The texts disagree. She dips it in the mud, coating it thoroughly, then stands and begins swinging the rope in wide circles. Drops of mud fly from the rope, arcing through the air, and where each drop lands, it becomes a human. Hundreds form from a single swing. Thousands scatter across the landscape as she spins faster, mud flying, humans appearing like rain. But there's a difference. The carefully crafted humans, the ones she shaped with her own hands, they become the noble lines, the strong, the leaders, those who will later claim descent from her personal attention. The mud rope humans, formed in haste from splattered drops, they become the common people, the farmers and laborers, those whose backs will bend in fields, whose hands will build walls. This is how Chinese mythology encodes class structure into creation itself. Social hierarchy isn't imposed by later rulers, it's written into the origin story. Nobles are noble because a goddess gave them individual attention. Commoners are common because they emerge from splattered mud. The justification for inequality is cosmological, which makes it much harder to question. The humans spread, they learn to walk without wobbling, they discover speech, naming things, calling to each other across distances. They begin forming groups, building shelters, learning which plants can be eaten and which bring death. Nüwa watches them proliferate, satisfied with her creation. Then, disaster strikes. Two gods, Gonggong the water deity and Julong the fire god, begin fighting. The texts offer different reasons. Some say it's a territorial dispute. Others claim philosophical disagreement about how the universe should be ordered. The reason matters less than the consequence. Their battle escalates beyond control. Gonggong, losing the fight, becomes enraged beyond reason. In his fury, he smashes his head against Buzhou Mountain. Buzhou wasn't just any mountain. It was one of the pillars holding up the sky, a remnant of Pangu's original structure, a load-bearing peak in the architecture of reality. When Gonggong's horned head crashes into it, the mountain cracks. Then it crumbles. Then it collapses entirely, taking a portion of the sky with it. The northwestern sky falls. Suddenly, heaven has a hole in it. The neat separation Pangu died to maintain is compromised. Chaos starts leaking back through the gap. Not the complete return to Hundun, but a dangerous blurring of boundaries. Fire rains down from heaven. The earth tilts, its perfect horizontal plane skewing as the supporting pillar fails. Rivers begin flowing backward, confused by the new geometry. The southeastern earth sinks in response to the northwestern collapse. Water floods the lowlands. Humans, Nüwa's carefully and hastily made children, start drowning. Some flee to high ground, others perish in the rising waters. The world isn't ending, but it's coming apart at the seams, structure degrading toward chaos. Nüwa cannot allow this. She created beings to populate the world. She won't watch them drown in a cosmic accident caused by feuding gods. She takes responsibility for repair, though the damage wasn't her fault. This becomes another pattern in Chinese mythology. The burden falls not on who caused the problem, but on who has the power and will to fix it. She begins gathering materials. First, she needs to patch the sky. She collects stones of 5 different colors: black from the north, white from the west, red from the south, blue from the east, yellow from the center. These aren't random choices. They represent the 5 elements that Chinese cosmology recognizes as fundamental: water, metal, fire, wood, earth. To repair reality, she needs reality's basic components. She builds an enormous fire and places the stones within it. The heat must be tremendous, hot enough to melt stones, hot enough to fuse them into something new. The texts don't describe her discomfort. Gods don't feel pain the way humans do. Or perhaps they feel it but understand it as necessary rather than something to avoid. She tends the fire, waiting for the stones to liquefy to blend their colors and properties into a cosmic paste. When the stones melt, she gathers the molten mixture. She rises toward the broken sky, flying or climbing or simply willing herself upward. The method isn't specified. She reaches the torn section of heaven and begins smearing the five-colored stone paste across the gap. She's not just filling a hole, she's weaving reality back together, reestablishing the boundary between heaven and earth, repairing the separation Pangu spent 18,000 years creating. The repair holds. The fire stops raining down, the chaos stops leaking through, but you can still see the patch job if you know where to look. The sky isn't uniformly colored anymore. It has variations, gradations, the subtle evidence of repair. The five colored stones left their mark. Dawn shows red and gold. Noon brings pure blue. Sunset displays the full spectrum as light passes through the mended sections. But the fallen pillar still needs replacing. The northwestern sky might be patched, but it lacks support. It could fall again. Nüwa knows temporary fixes eventually fail. She needs something strong, something permanent. She makes a choice that reveals the utilitarian streak in Chinese divinity. She finds a massive turtle. In some versions, she creates one specifically for this purpose. She takes its four legs and positions them at the four corners of the earth, turning the creature into living architecture. The turtle's legs become the pillars that hold the sky, replacing the broken mountain with something organic and resilient. The turtle doesn't die in this process, not exactly. It lives on as infrastructure, as the foundation that keeps reality functioning. Some traditions claim you can still feel it shift sometimes. Earthquakes are the turtle adjusting its stance, redistributing weight, stretching muscles that ache from holding the sky for millennia. Nüwa performs one final task. The floods haven't fully receded. Vast lakes and swamps cover land that should be dry. She gathers reeds from the marshes, bundles them together, and uses them to dam the excess water, channeling it back to the rivers and seas. She doesn't just repair, she improves. The world after her intervention has better drainage than before. Finally, satisfied that stability has returned, Nüwa withdraws. She's saved her creation. The humans continue spreading across the repaired world, unaware of how close they came to drowning in chaos. They look up at the patched sky and think it's beautiful, never knowing it's a scar. This myth establishes several crucial themes. First, the world is fragile. Catastrophe can strike through divine carelessness. The universe isn't self-maintaining. It requires constant vigilance and repair. Second, gods take responsibility for creation's well-being. Nüwa didn't cause the sky to fall, but she fixed it anyway, because power comes with obligation. Third, repair leaves evidence. The five-colored stones still show in sunset. Earthquakes still remind us of the turtle's burden. Perfection was lost when Buzhou Mountain fell. What remains is functional imperfection, beautiful precisely because it's been broken and mended. The flood motif introduced here will return repeatedly. Water as chaos, water as divine punishment, water as the test that separates worthy humans from unworthy ones. Every flood story in Chinese mythology echoes this first deluge, when Nüwa's children nearly drowned because gods couldn't control their tempers, and Nüwa herself becomes the template for the divine feminine in Chinese tradition. She's creator and repairer, mother and architect, gentle in forming humans from clay, but fierce in defending them from cosmic collapse. Later goddesses will follow this pattern, powerful but nurturing, creative but utilitarian, beautiful but unafraid to get their hands dirty when reality needs fixing. The world now has inhabitants and a repaired sky. The stage Pangu's body created has actors moving across it. What they need next are the gifts that separate humans from animals, the technologies and knowledge that transform survival into civilization. Rival gods: Fuxi, Shenong, and the civilizing flame. The humans Nüwa created multiply across the landscape. They cluster in groups, seeking safety in numbers, sharing the warmth of fires they don't yet know how to make themselves. They eat what they find, fruits that sometimes poison them, roots that sometimes heal them, meat from animals they catch with increasing skill. But they're still barely more than clever animals, living moment to moment, without writing or farming or the structures that turn survival into culture. Three gods emerge, or are revealed, or descend from heaven, depending on the text, to bridge this gap. They're called the three sovereigns, though their relationship to each other shifts between tellings. Sometimes they're brothers, sometimes they're successive rulers, sometimes they exist in different eras entirely, their stories woven together by later scholars who needed neat categories. Fuxi appears first, or perhaps most prominently. Some texts identify him as Nüwa's brother, others call him her husband. A few suggest they're the same being in different forms, divine androgyny split into complementary halves. Like Nüwa, he often appears with human torso and serpent tail, the reptilian lower body connecting him to Earth's most ancient lineages. Fuxi observes the humans living their unstructured lives. They communicate, but inconsistently. They remember things, but memories die with the people who hold them. Each generation relearns what the previous generation knew, unable to pass wisdom forward efficiently. Knowledge keeps being rediscovered instead of building upon itself. He gives them writing. The texts describe this moment with reverent vagueness. Fuxi watches a spider weaving its web, or he observes cracks in a tortoise shell, or he studies patterns in the stars. From these observations, he derives the 8 trigrams, Ba Gua, combinations of broken and unbroken lines that represent fundamental forces: heaven, earth, water, fire, thunder, wind, mountain, lake. These 8 capture the basic variations of existence, the primary textures of reality. From the 8 trigrams, more complex systems emerge, the 64 hexagrams, eventually characters that represent words, ideas, concrete nouns, and abstract concepts. Writing doesn't arrive as a complete alphabet. It unfolds from observation of natural patterns, suggesting that language itself is embedded in reality, waiting for someone with eyes sharp enough to see it. With writing comes memory that survives death. With writing comes law that everyone can reference. With writing comes poetry, history, contracts, threats carved on stone. The humans begin accumulating knowledge instead of losing it. Civilization's foundation is laid, the ability to speak to people who haven't been born yet, to learn from people who died before you were born. Fuxi doesn't stop there. He teaches hunting and fishing, not just chase the animal until it's tired, but systematic approaches, how to read tracks, how to predict migration patterns, how to knot nets that turn rivers into larders. He shows them how to cook meat, transforming random fire into controlled flame. Raw food becomes prepared meals. Disease decreases. Humans grow stronger. Then he addresses an issue that Nüwa's creation method left ambiguous. How do humans make more humans properly? They've been reproducing, obviously, given their spreading numbers, but without structure, without rules. Brothers with sisters, mothers with sons, the necessary incest of a limited population creating increasingly problematic offspring. Fuxi establishes marriage. He creates the concept of exogamy. Marry outside your immediate family. Take a partner from another clan. This isn't just social nicety, it's genetic wisdom encoded in ritual. The children born from more distant unions are healthier, stronger, smarter. Within a few generations, the effects become obvious. Fuxi doesn't understand genetics, but he understands that certain breeding patterns produce better results. Marriage brings clan structure. Clan structure brings property concepts. Property concepts bring trade. Trade brings specialization. Suddenly, not everyone has to hunt and fish and gather and build. Some people can focus on making pottery while others focus on weaving cloth. Efficiency multiplies. Surplus appears. With surplus comes leisure. With leisure comes art, music, philosophy, all the ornamental additions that transform mere survival into culture worth preserving. Next comes Shenong, the divine farmer. Where Fuxi gave humans tools for thinking and organizing, Shenong gives them tools for feeding themselves reliably. He appears during a time of want. The population has grown too large for hunting and gathering to sustain. Food scarcity threatens to undo everything Fuxi accomplished. Humans need more calories than the wild provides. Shenong's contribution is agriculture, but he doesn't just hand humans seeds and wish them luck. He performs the dangerous work of trial and error himself. The texts describe him testing hundreds of plants, maybe thousands, putting leaves and roots and berries into his mouth, chewing carefully, noting the effects. Some plants give energy, some cause visions, some bring death. His body is transparent in some versions of the myth. You can see through his skin and watch the plants traveling through his digestive system, Observe how they affect his organs in real time. This seems like fantastical embellishment until you consider what it represents. Systematic observation, scientific method applied to botany. Shenong doesn't guess. He measures, records, verifies. 70 times in a single day, he poisons himself testing plants. Each time, he finds an antidote through yet more testing. Each time, he recovers and continues. This is the god of agriculture's primary myth. He suffered so humans wouldn't have to. He took the risk so knowledge could be gained safely. Every farmer who plants according to Shenong's wisdom is benefiting from his poisoned afternoons. He teaches which plants can be cultivated, which ones grow reliably if you put their seeds in soil and provide water, which ones respond to human tending by producing larger yields, sweeter fruits, more nutritious grains. The 5 sacred grains, rice, millet, barley, beans, wheat, are identified and promoted. Agriculture begins shifting from wild foraging to deliberate cultivation. Shenong provides tools as well. The plow appears, a sharpened stick at first, then later a wooden blade, then eventually a metal edge that cuts deeper into the earth. The hoe for weeding and aerating soil, the sickle for harvest. Each tool represents an innovation, a technique refined through practice, a piece of technology that multiplies human effort. He organizes the first markets. If agriculture creates surplus, surplus needs distribution. Shenong establishes the concept of trade midday when the sun stands high and honest dealings can happen in full light. Farmers bring their excess harvest, craftspeople bring their tools, weavers bring their cloth. Everyone exchanges what they have too much of for what they need more of. Money hasn't been invented yet. This is pure barter, but the principle of value exchange is established. Medicine emerges from Shenong's plant testing. He identifies herbs that reduce fever, roots that calm angry stomachs, leaves that help wounds close without infection. He's not just the divine farmer. He's the divine pharmacist, the god of controlled substances, the patron of anyone who understands that the difference between poison and medicine is merely dosage and application. These 3, Nüwa, Fuxi, Shenong, represent the foundational gifts. Nüwa gives humans existence and physical form. Fuxi gives them the cognitive tools to organize socially and accumulate knowledge. Shenong gives them the material basis for sustainable civilization through agriculture and medicine. Together, they transform mud-formed creatures into something resembling the people who would later tell their stories. But notice what's happening here. The gods are blurring into sages. Fuxi and Shenong don't wield obvious supernatural power the way Nüwa does when she patches the sky. They invent things. They teach. They experiment. The line between deity and culture hero grows fuzzy. Are they gods descending to help humans, or are they exceptional humans later elevated to divine status? Chinese mythology doesn't insist on clarity here. It allows the ambiguity, suggesting that divinity and humanity exist on a spectrum rather than in separate categories. This becomes crucial for understanding Chinese religious thought. Unlike traditions where gods remain forever separate from mortals, Chinese cosmology allows traffic between categories. Humans can become gods through virtue or achievement. Gods can become more human through involvement in earthly affairs. The boundary is permeable, which has profound implications. It means perfection is theoretically achievable. It means heaven isn't a distant realm, but something humans can touch through disciplined practice. Early Chinese values crystallize in these myths. Order matters more than chaos. Agriculture matters more than nomadic hunting. Knowledge passed forward through writing matters more than oral tradition that dies with each generation. Family structure matters because it creates clan structure, which creates social stability. The gods don't just create, they civilize. They take the raw humans Nüwa formed and give them the tools to rise above animal existence. Yet there's tension in this ideology. Agricultural civilization requires settled populations. Settled populations can be controlled, taxed, organized into armies. The myths of civilization are simultaneously myths of state formation, of power consolidation, of some people gaining authority over others. The markets Shenong creates need regulation. The writing Fuxi teaches can be used for decrees and conscription lists. The agricultural surplus feeds not just families, but also courts, bureaucracies, military campaigns. So when we celebrate these civilizing gods, we're also watching the birth of hierarchy, inequality, centralized power. The myths don't hide this. They encode it directly through Nüwa's creation method, where hand-formed nobles differ from rope-splattered commoners. The system isn't accidental. It's designed into the origin story, naturalized through cosmology, made to seem inevitable rather than chosen. The early humans now have bodies from Nüwa, minds shaped by Fuxi's teachings, and stomachs filled by Shennong's agriculture. They have writing and marriage and markets. They have medicine and plows and social structure. They're ready for the next phase, not just surviving in the world, but fighting over it. The era of creative gods giving gifts is ending. The era of divine wars determining cosmic hierarchy is beginning. The Yellow Emperor versus Chio, myth as war propaganda. The scattered human tribes are consolidating. Agriculture means staying in one place. Staying in one place means defining territory. Territory means borders. Borders mean neighbors. Neighbors mean conflict. The peaceful era of receiving divine gifts is ending. Competition for resources, for prime farmland, for control of river valleys, all of it ignites tensions that will be settled through violence. Two figures emerge from this period, both historical and mythical, their actual existence debated by scholars while their symbolic power remains unquestioned. On one side, Huangdi, the Yellow Emperor, who will become the mythical ancestor of Han Chinese civilization. On the other, Chio, the ox-headed war god, who will become the eternal villain, the defeated outsider, the one who must lose so history can be written by victors. But the truth is more complicated than the myth admits. Chio appears first in the text as a military genius. He commands 81 brothers, or perhaps their clans under his banner, the number symbolic rather than literal. His head resembles an ox or a bull, depending on the telling. He has bronze skin, or perhaps wears bronze armor. The texts conflate his body with his equipment. He forges weapons from metal, an innovation that gives his forces devastating advantage over enemies still fighting with stone and wood. Chio's people are fearsome. They specialize in warfare, understanding violence as a technology to be refined. They develop tactics. They create weapons designed specifically for taking human life efficiently. Swords that cut cleanly through leather and bone. Spears with metal points that don't shatter on impact. Shields that turn aside enemy blows. While others farm and trade, Chio's followers study war. The texts portray this as inherently evil, but consider what it actually represents. Chio is from the south, from regions that the northern Chinese states would later conquer and assimilate. He represents non-Han peoples, tribes with different customs, different gods, different languages. The myth of Chio isn't just about one warlord. It's about all the ethnic groups that oppose Chinese expansion, compressed into a single demonic figure. Huangdi, by contrast, receives immediate legitimization. He's born under auspicious signs. Heaven speaks to his mother in dreams. He emerges already marked for greatness, already destined to unify the tribes under proper rule. Where Chio invents weapons, Huangdi invents civilization, or so the myth claims. Writing, mathematics, medicine, the compass, the calendar, all attributed to the Yellow Emperor or his court. The war between them becomes inevitable. Chio's forces begin expanding, conquering neighboring territories, disrupting the peaceful agricultural settlements. Huangdi positions himself as defender of civilization against barbarian chaos. The battle lines are drawn. Order versus disorder, culture versus violence, the future versus the past. They meet on the plains of Zhuolu. The texts describe this battle with mythological intensity. Chio commands the weather. He summons thick fog that blinds Huangdi's troops, turns the battlefield into a realm of confusion where soldiers strike at shadows and friendly forces clash accidentally. His brothers attack with bronze weapons that cut through flesh and bone. Blood soaks into the yellow earth. Bodies pile faster than they can be cleared. Huangdi seems outmatched. His forces are better organized, more disciplined, but Chio's tactical innovations and superior weapons threaten to overwhelm them. The Yellow Emperor prays to heaven for assistance. Heaven naturally sides with the one who represents civilization over the one who represents its destruction. A divine creature appears, the drought demon, a celestial being who drives away Chio's fog. Suddenly, the battlefield becomes visible. Huangdi's superior numbers gain advantage when they can actually see their targets. The tide begins turning. Chio adapts summoning rain to bog down Huangdi's troops in mud. But Huangdi receives aid from another divine helper, the compass. Whether he invents it during the battle or receives it from heaven, the result is the same. Even in darkness and weather, his troops can navigate, maintain formation, execute coordinated attacks. The battle stretches for days, weeks, maybe years, depending on the text. The mythological timeframe makes duration impossible to determine. What matters is the outcome. Chio loses. His brothers fall, his armies scatter, he flees or fights to the end. The stories disagree, but either way, he's captured or defeated. What happens next reveals the myth's propaganda function. Chio isn't just defeated, he's destroyed so thoroughly that his people can never rise again. Huangdi orders him executed. His head is buried far from his body, so he can't resurrect. His blood stains the ground so permanently that grass won't grow there. Some texts claim maple trees sprouted from his blood, their red leaves remembering his final moments. His followers suffer equally. Those who surrender are absorbed into Huangdi's forces, losing their distinct identity. Those who flee are hunted to extinction or pushed to the margins of the known world. Chio's culture is erased, replaced with Huangdi's version of civilization. His gods are forgotten or demoted to demons. His innovations, metalworking, advanced warfare, are credited to the victors. This is where the myth reveals its purpose. Chio represents everyone who opposed the expansion of what would become Han Chinese civilization. Every southern tribe conquered, every ethnic minority assimilated, every border conflict that ended with Chinese victory. All of it is compressed into this single mythic battle. By making Chio monstrous, the myth justifies what happened to the people he symbolizes. The Yellow Emperor becomes the mythical ancestor of the Han Chinese people. To be Chinese is to descend from Huangdi, to inherit his victory, to benefit from his civilization. Temples are built to him. Dynasties claim his bloodline. He transforms from successful warlord to cosmic principle, the embodiment of proper order, the archetype of righteous rulership. But here's what the myth tries to hide. Chio's people were just as advanced. They invented metalworking. They developed sophisticated military tactics. They had their own agriculture, their own writing, their own culture. The difference wasn't civilization versus barbarism. It was competing civilizations, and one had the power to write history while the other became a cautionary tale. Later dynasties would repeatedly invoke this battle. Whenever China faced external threats, when northern nomads pressed at borders, when southern kingdoms resisted absorption, the rhetoric returned to Huangdi versus Chio. The enemy was always painted as the new Chio, violent, chaotic, threatening civilization itself. And the emperor was always the new Huangdi, heaven's chosen, defender of order, destined to prevail. This myth established a pattern that would repeat throughout Chinese history. Military conquest becomes cosmic necessity. Defeated peoples become demons. Victory proves heaven's approval, and heaven's approval justifies violence. The circular logic is perfect. We won because heaven supported us, and we know heaven supported us because we won. The actual historical conflict, if there was one, is impossible to recover. By the time the stories were written down, they'd been filtered through centuries of political use. Huangdi and Chio might have been real chieftains who fought over territory in prehistoric China, or they might be complete fabrications, symbols created to explain the ethnic composition of ancient Chinese states. The historical truth is lost beneath layers of mythology serving state purposes. What remains is the pattern. The righteous ruler backed by heaven defeats the demonic outsider through superior virtue and divine assistance. This template would be applied to the Flame Emperor, Gong Gong, and countless historical figures who opposed imperial authority. Rebellion becomes cosmic transgression. Dissent becomes alliance with chaos. Loyalty to the emperor becomes alignment with heaven itself. The Yellow Emperor's victory creates more than political unity. It establishes cosmological order. After defeating Chio, Huangdi organizes the first bureaucracy, not just for humans, but for gods. Deities receive assignments. Spirits get jurisdictions. The divine realm begins operating like an imperial court, with the Jade Emperor eventually presiding over a celestial administration that mirrors earthly government. This bureaucratization of heaven is uniquely Chinese. Other traditions have pantheons, where gods rule through raw power or family connection. Chinese cosmology creates a divine meritocracy, theoretically. Gods hold positions. They can be promoted or demoted based on performance. They fill out reports. They answer to superiors. Heaven becomes an office building where immortals push celestial paperwork. The human world mirrors this structure. Emperors claim mandate from heaven, but that mandate requires proper administration. They build bureaucracies that classify, register, tax, and control the population. The cosmic and the political align perfectly, each justifying the other. As above, so below. The gods organize heaven into departments, so emperors organize earth into provinces. Chiyo's defeat marks the end of the chaotic period when tribes fought freely. After Zhuolu, there's only one legitimate authority, the line that traces back to Huangdi, the civilization that claims heaven's blessing, the culture that won the right to define what civilization means. Everyone else either assimilates or gets written into mythology as demons, their defeat proof of their unworthiness. The blood hasn't dried on the plains of Zhuolu. The fog Chiyo summoned hasn't fully cleared. But already the myth is calcifying into propaganda, the story becoming tool, the past being shaped to serve the present. This is what myths do when empires tell them. They justify conquest, naturalize hierarchy, transform political victory into cosmic inevitability. The Yellow Emperor stands triumphant, and beneath his feet, the bones of those who opposed him fertilize the earth from which new dynasties will grow. The Flame Emperor, the Wind God, and the rise of bureaucracy. Huangdi's victory at Zhuolu doesn't immediately produce universal peace. Defeating Chiyo consolidated certain tribes under the Yellow Emperor's banner, but the world remains fractious, filled with competing powers, each claiming divine mandate or supernatural origin. The transition from mythological chaos to bureaucratic order happens gradually through a series of conflicts and accommodations that shape heaven's eventual structure. The Flame Emperor, Yandi or Shennong, depending on whether you treat them as the same figure or separate beings, represents the southern complement to Huangdi's northern power. Where the Yellow Emperor embodies earth and centralized authority, the Flame Emperor embodies fire and agricultural abundance. Early texts position them as rivals, then allies, their relationship shifting based on which political arrangement the storyteller wants to naturalize. The core myth describes their conflict and resolution. Flame Emperor's people thrive through agriculture. They control vast fields yielding abundant harvests, but abundance creates complacency. The Flame Emperor's rule grows lax. He forgets that order requires constant maintenance, that civilization demands vigilance. His people begin encroaching on neighboring territories. Conflicts erupt over water rights, over borders, over whose god holds authority over which river valley. Huangdi marches south to restore order. The texts frame this as reluctant intervention. The Yellow Emperor doesn't seek conquest, but chaos forces his hand. The Flame Emperor must be corrected for the good of all. They meet at Bangquan, and the battle mirrors Zhuolu, but with different symbolic weight. This isn't civilization against barbarism. It's one civilizing force against another, a contest between complementary principles that must be reconciled rather than destroyed. The Yellow Emperor wins. But unlike Chiyo, the Flame Emperor isn't executed or erased. He's incorporated. He accepts Huangdi's supremacy while retaining authority over his domain. This establishes the template for Chinese imperial expansion. Defeated rulers who accept the cosmic order can keep their thrones as subordinate administrators. Those who refuse become demons. Those who submit become junior partners in the celestial bureaucracy. This pattern reflects actual political practice. Chinese dynasties expanded by absorbing neighboring states, allowing local rulers to maintain nominal authority as long as they acknowledged the emperor's ultimate sovereignty, paid tribute, sent hostages called guests in polite documents, and provided military support when requested. The mythological battle at Bangquan explains this arrangement as cosmic necessity rather than political convenience. But bureaucracy requires more than two gods agreeing on hierarchy. It needs specialists, departments, jurisdictions clearly defined. The wind god Fengbo and the rain god Yushi emerge as examples of this specialization. They're not supreme deities ruling over broad domains. They're functionaries with specific responsibilities. Fengbo manages wind patterns. Yushi handles rainfall. They report to higher authorities and work within assigned parameters. Their stories reveal how divine bureaucracy functions. During Chiyo's rebellion, Fengbo and Yushi sided with the wrong team. They helped create the fog and storms that nearly defeated Huangdi. After Zhuolu, they're captured and punished. But punishment doesn't mean destruction. It means reassignment, demotion, loss of autonomy. They keep their positions because heaven needs wind and rain managed, but they surrender independent judgment. They become civil servants rather than independent agents. This bureaucratization extends across the divine realm. Thunder god, lightning goddess, drought demon, flood dragon, each receives a job description. Each operates within defined limits. The anarchic period, when gods acted on personal whim, gives way to structured administration. Even powerful deities answer to supervisors, file reports, attend celestial meetings. Taoist cosmology, developing during this mythological period, provides the philosophical framework for divine bureaucracy. The Tao, the nameless principle underlying reality, expresses itself through countless manifestations. Each god represents one aspect of the Tao's infinite potential, but aspects need coordination. The Tao's perfect harmony at the metaphysical level requires active management at the practical level. This creates an interesting tension. On one hand, Taoist philosophy emphasizes spontaneity, non-action, flowing with natural patterns. On the other hand, Taoist mythology describes a heaven packed with administrators, rule followers, bureaucrats tracking the movement of stars and the length of human lives. The contradiction resolves when you recognize that natural order isn't automatic. It requires divine labor to maintain. Heaven's bureaucrats don't impose artificial order on chaos. They maintain the natural order that chaos constantly threatens. Earthly government mirrors this celestial structure. Confucius, writing centuries after these myths crystallized, describes proper governance as alignment with heavenly patterns. The emperor stands at the center like a pole star, and everyone else revolves around him in appropriate orbits. Ministers manage specific departments, just as gods manage weather phenomena. The whole system works through harmonious coordination, with each part performing its function without exceeding its authority. But bureaucracy requires literacy, records, standardization. Myths credit various figures with inventing writing, but the bureaucratic impulse demands more than simple character sets. It needs ledgers, censuses, tax records, legal codes. The impulse to organize reality through documentation drives both heavenly and earthly administration. The earliest oracle bones show this bureaucratic thinking already present. Questions put to ancestors aren't vague requests for general blessing. They're specific inquiries about specific matters. Will it rain before the harvest? Should the army march east or west? Will the king's toothache respond to treatment? The questions assume a universe where outcomes can be predicted, influenced, managed through proper procedure. Heaven's bureaucracy even manages death and afterlife. The 10 courts of hell, administered by judges who evaluate human souls, determine reincarnation or punishment based on earthly behavior. Ledgers record every action. Demons serve as bailiffs and executioners. The afterlife becomes another department in the vast celestial organization, handling the back-end processing of human lives. This has profound psychological effects. In traditions where gods act unpredictably, humans develop fatalistic or propitiatory relationships with the divine. You make offerings and hope for mercy. But in a bureaucratic cosmos, you can file appeals. You can find the right official to bribe. You can work the system. Heaven becomes navigable rather than simply fearsome. The downside is that heaven's rules become as complex and arbitrary as earthly laws. Salvation requires not just virtue, but also procedural knowledge. You must know which god handles your specific problem, which offerings they prefer, which formulas they respond to. Religion becomes bureaucratic expertise, and priests become celestial lawyers, helping clients navigate divine red tape. Back in the mythological present, elemental gods continue organizing into hierarchies. The 5 emperors, deities associated with cardinal directions and central position, establish the framework for spatial bureaucracy. Each direction has its ruler, its color, its element, its season. East governs spring and growth. South manages summer and fire. West handles autumn and harvest. North controls winter and water. The center balances all 4, maintaining cosmic equilibrium. This directional scheme isn't abstract philosophy. It has practical applications. Cities are built with directional orientations matching cosmic principles. Palaces position throne rooms at symbolic centers. Gardens arrange plants according to elemental associations. Architecture becomes cosmology made concrete. every building reproducing the celestial bureaucracy's organization in wood and stone. Temples multiply, each dedicated to specific gods with specific jurisdictions. Need rain? Visit the Dragon King's temple. Want a child? Petition Songzi Guanyin. Seeking success in exams? Pray to Wenshang Wang, the god of literature. Heaven's bureaucracy creates a marketplace of divine services, with each deity specializing in narrow functions. But bureaucracy breeds corruption in heaven as on earth. Gods can be bribed. Offerings influence outcomes. Wealthy families build elaborate temples to curry divine favor, while poor families make do with roadside shrines. The cosmic bureaucracy develops the same inequities as human government. Those with resources navigate it successfully, while those without struggle. Folk religion responds by developing strategies for manipulating the system. You don't just pray, you negotiate, making specific deals with gods. Grant me a son, and I'll rebuild your temple. Give my husband safe voyage, and I'll offer a pig at your altar. The relationship becomes transactional, contractual, commercial. This commercialization of heaven horrifies Confucian scholars who insist on sincere virtue over mechanical offerings. But the masses, pragmatic in their spirituality, work the system as best they can. If heaven operates like a government office, you treat it like a government office. You bring gifts, you flatter officials, you exploit connections. The wind god and rain god, once independent powers causing whatever weather suited them, now fill out requisition forms. The thunder god can't strike someone dead without authorization from the Bureau of Thunder. Even natural disasters require approval from celestial committees, with gods meeting to discuss whether floods or droughts serve the empire's karmic balance. This bureaucratization reaches its peak with the Jade Emperor, who will formalize the entire system, but already the pattern is set. Heaven mirrors earth, earth mirrors heaven, and both operate through hierarchical structures, where everyone has a boss and everyone has subordinates, where nothing happens without proper documentation, where even spontaneous phenomena follow procedural rules. The divine farmer, the yellow emperor, the flame emperor, all of them become offices rather than individuals. The person holding the position might change, but the position itself becomes eternal, written into cosmic structure, necessary for reality's continued functioning. This is how myth supports dynasty. By making current political arrangements seem cosmologically inevitable, by suggesting that bureaucracy isn't human invention, but universal principle. The gods have organized themselves into departments. The next step is establishing the central authority who coordinates all departments, who sits at the apex of the celestial pyramid, who embodies heaven's ultimate bureaucratic power. The Jade Emperor, celestial bureaucrat in chief. Heaven needs a chief executive. The various gods have organized into departments, established jurisdictions, developed reporting structures, but someone must coordinate the whole system. Someone must hold ultimate authority, make final decisions, bear responsibility when the cosmic bureaucracy fails. That someone becomes the Jade Emperor, Yuhuang Dadi, the god who turns heaven into a functioning government. His origin story is revealing. Unlike Pangu, who emerged from chaos, or Nüwa, who simply appears when needed, the Jade Emperor earns his position through bureaucratic means: spiritual cultivation, accumulation of merit, ascending through lower positions until reaching the top. He wasn't always supreme. He climbed the ladder. Different texts provide different accounts of his mortal origin. One tradition describes him as the son of a minor king who renounced his throne to cultivate Tao. He meditated in mountain caves for countless years, performed miracles to help suffering beings, accumulated so much virtue that heaven itself had to acknowledge his attainment. Upon death, or transcendence, the line blurs, he ascended to celestial realms and began working through divine bureaucracy. He started small, minor godling assigned to trivial tasks, managing rainfall in one valley, tracking the lifespan of sparrows. Every bureaucracy has entry-level positions, and heaven proves no exception. But he performed these duties with perfect diligence, never complaining about insignificant responsibilities. Understanding small's done perfectly prepare you for large things done adequately. Promotion followed competence. He moved from local deity to regional authority, from managing weather in one province to coordinating multiple weather gods across territories. His superiors noticed his administrative talent, his ability to balance competing demands. his skill at resolving disputes without allowing personal bias to influence judgment. Eventually, after eons of faithful service, the previous supreme authority retired or died or dissolved into the Tao. The texts remain vague about what happens to retired emperors of heaven. A vacancy opened at the top. The celestial bureaucracy needed someone who understood how every department functioned, someone who'd worked through the ranks, someone whose authority came from demonstrated competence rather than raw power. The Jade Emperor received the promotion. His first act was formalizing structures that had developed organically. He issued the celestial equivalent of job descriptions for every god, clarifying who reported to whom, establishing clear chains of command. The Department of Thunder and Lightning, the Bureau of Wind and Clouds, the Office of Destiny, each received written charters defining their authority and limitations. He created the Ministry of Time, assigning gods to manage the calendar, seasons, the progression from day to night. He established the Department of Life and Death, where gods tracked every being's lifespan, recording births and deaths with meticulous accuracy. He organized the Bureau of Earthly Affairs, dispatching gods to monitor human behavior and report back on moral conditions. His heaven becomes a mirror of imperial China's government structure. There's a Ministry of Revenue collecting spiritual tribute from lesser gods, a Ministry of Justice handling disputes between deities, a Ministry of Personnel managing divine appointments and promotions, even a Ministry of Rights ensuring that sacrifices from Earth meet proper standards. The Jade Emperor himself sits on a throne in a celestial palace that would make earthly emperors weep with envy. Jade columns, golden tiles, courtyards where immortals gather for formal audiences. He wears robes that symbolize his authority. Yellow, the imperial color, embroidered with dragons and cosmic symbols. He holds audiences at scheduled times, listening to petitions, issuing decrees, adjudicating conflicts. But his power has limits. Unlike monotheistic deities who create and control everything through unlimited will, the Jade Emperor operates within constraints. He didn't create the universe. Pangu did that. He can't arbitrarily rewrite natural law. The Tao establishes underlying principles. His authority is administrative rather than absolute, executive rather than creative. This limitation becomes crucial for understanding Chinese cosmic politics. The Jade Emperor can punish gods who violate celestial regulations, but he can't eliminate them entirely. They're necessary for reality's functioning. He can demote the thunder god for excessive enthusiasm, but thunder must continue. He manages the system. He doesn't create it from scratch. His relationship with Earth mirrors the Emperor's relationship with the Empire. He wants order, harmony, prosperity, but he can't micromanage every detail. He relies on local gods to handle regional affairs, intervening only when problems escalate beyond local capacity. Floods, droughts, plagues, these require his attention. Individual human problems remain beneath his notice unless they threaten cosmic balance. This creates an interesting dynamic. Humans pray to the Jade Emperor for major issues, ending wars, stopping plagues, relieving catastrophic disasters. But for everyday problems, they petition local gods. They have the divine equivalent of county officials, rather than the emperor himself. You don't write to the president about your parking ticket, and you don't pray to the supreme deity about your toothache. The Jade Emperor's court becomes the setting for countless stories. Gods arrive to report on their jurisdictions. Immortals petition for promotions or transfers to better positions. Rebellious spirits are brought before him for judgment. His throne room serves as the ultimate court where cosmic justice theoretically prevails, though, like all bureaucracies, corruption and favoritism sometimes influence outcomes. One of his key responsibilities involves maintaining the mandate of heaven, the principle that earthly rulers govern only while they maintain virtue. The Jade Emperor watches dynasties rise and fall, withdrawing heaven's support from corrupt or incompetent emperors, bestowing it on worthy successors. This gives him political power over Earth's rulers, though he typically exercises it subtly, through signs and portents rather than direct intervention. Natural disasters become heaven's language. Floods, earthquakes, unseasonable weather, all of them signal that something's wrong in the cosmic order, usually because the emperor has violated moral principles. The Jade Emperor doesn't cause these disasters directly. They emerge from the natural consequence of broken harmony. but he allows them to proceed as warnings. If earthly rulers ignore the warnings, worse consequences follow until dynasty collapses and a new one rises. His bureaucratic nature makes him oddly sympathetic. He's not an angry god demanding worship or a distant deity unconcerned with human affairs. He's a middle manager dealing with impossible demands. Heaven expects order, earth generates chaos, and he's stuck mediating between ideal and reality. Gods bring him problems. Humans generate crises, and he must respond appropriately while maintaining cosmic balance and not exceeding his authority. This explains why Chinese mythology includes so many stories about gods defying the Jade Emperor or finding loopholes in his regulations. He's powerful but not omnipotent, authoritative but not tyrannical. His rules can be negotiated, his judgments sometimes reversed on appeal. Heaven's bureaucracy operates like earthly bureaucracy. There's always another form to file, another official to petition, another way around obstacles. His relationship with Buddhism and Taoism creates additional complications. Buddhist cosmology introduces its own celestial hierarchy, with Buddha at the apex existing on a different plane than the Jade Emperor. Taoist philosophy suggests that the Tao transcends all anthropomorphic deities, including the Jade Emperor. Yet Chinese folk religion syncretizes these traditions, creating a cosmos where Buddha, the Jade Emperor, and Laozi all hold authority in different domains. The result is theological complexity that mirrors China's political fragmentation during certain periods. Different regions emphasize different deities. Different temples promote different hierarchies. The Jade Emperor remains supreme in official state religion, but folk practice hedges bets by honoring multiple supreme beings, just in case. His greatest limitation is that he can't prevent the cycle itself. Chinese cosmology envisions reality moving through great ages, periods of order followed by periods of chaos followed by renewal. The Jade Emperor can maintain order during stable periods, but he can't prevent the eventual return to chaos. He manages the universe's current configuration, but he didn't create it and he can't stop it from eventually transforming. This cyclical view differs fundamentally from linear Western cosmology. There's no final battle between good and evil, no ultimate redemption, no permanent paradise. Instead, everything cycles, order to chaos to order again, kingdoms rising and falling, even gods eventually dissolving back into the Tao before re-emerging in new forms. The Jade Emperor administers the current cycle, knowing that future cycles will have their own administrators. His palace contains the register of life and death, where every being's allotted lifespan is recorded. Gods assigned to the Department of Life and Death consult this register constantly, checking when souls should be called back to the underworld for judgment and reincarnation. But even this system allows appeals, amendments, extensions through sufficient merit or divine intervention. The famous story of Sun Wukong, the Monkey King, will demonstrate the limits of the Jade Emperor's power. A single monkey with sufficient power and audacity can wreak havoc in heaven, force the supreme deity to offer compromise, require Buddha's intervention to restore order. The Jade Emperor's authority depends on others respecting it, on the system functioning as designed. When someone refuses to play by bureaucratic rules, bureaucracy struggles to respond. But that chaos remains in the future. For now, the Jade Emperor sits on his throne, reviewing reports from the Department of Thunder, adjudicating disputes between river dragons, approving rainfall quotas for next season. He's established celestial order through the same methods earthly emperors use: clear hierarchies, written regulations, consequences for violations, rewards for compliance. Heaven has become government. The gods have become civil servants. The cosmos operates through administrative principles familiar to anyone who's navigated human bureaucracy. This makes the divine realm comprehensible but also disappointing. Heaven reproduces Earth's tedious inefficiencies, its frustrating procedures, its susceptibility to corruption and incompetence. Yet this is precisely why the Chinese mythological system resonated so deeply with the culture that created it. The cosmos wasn't alien or incomprehensible, it was familiar, operating on principles everyone understood from dealing with local officials. If you knew how to petition a magistrate, you knew how to petition a god. If you understood political hierarchy, you understood heaven's organization. The Jade Emperor sits at the apex, holding ultimate responsibility for cosmic order. But ultimate responsibility without unlimited power creates stress, forces compromise, requires constant adjustment to changing circumstances. He's the god who most resembles the emperors who claim descent from him, powerful but constrained, authoritative but answerable to higher principles, supreme within a system but unable to step outside that system. The celestial bureaucracy is established. The organizational chart is complete. Heaven runs like a well-oiled machine, except when it doesn't, except when chaos forces its way through carefully constructed procedures, except when someone appears who refuses to accept their assigned place in the cosmic hierarchy. That someone is about to be born from a stone on the mountain of flowers and fruit, and his arrival will test every assumption the Jade Emperor has made about how reality should function. Sun Wukong rises, the Monkey King's divine revolt. On the mountain of flowers and fruit, a stone sits exposed to the elements for who knows how many centuries. Wind and rain wear at it, sun bakes it, moon cools it. The stone absorbs cosmic energy, yang from the sun, yin from the moon, qi from earth and heaven. It's not conscious, not yet, but it's accumulating potential, the way clouds accumulate water before releasing storms. One day the stone cracks. From inside emerges a monkey, not birthed by parents, not created by gods, not formed from clay like Nüwa's humans. He simply is, a being without origin story, without family, without place in the cosmic hierarchy the Jade Emperor spent eons establishing. His eyes shoot twin beams of golden light that reach the celestial palace. The light alerts heaven's watchers. Something unprecedented has entered the world. The monkey explores his mountain. He's naturally curious, supremely confident, afraid of nothing because he doesn't yet know fear exists. He meets other monkeys, normal animals born through normal means, and they recognize something different about him. He's stronger, faster, smarter. They make him king of the mountain, and he accepts the title without understanding what kingship entails. Life is good. The mountain provides abundant fruit. The other monkeys follow his lead. He plays, eats, sleeps, explores. But consciousness brings dissatisfaction. He realizes that pleasure is temporary, that life is finite, that even monkey kings grow old and weak. His subjects will die. He will die. Everything ends. This thought becomes unbearable. He decides to seek immortality. Normal monkeys don't make such decisions. They live in the moment, satisfied with food and safety. But Sun Wukong, the name he'll later acquire meaning awakened to emptiness, can't accept mortality once he's conceived of its alternative. He leaves his mountain, crosses oceans, searches for someone who can teach him to transcend death. He finds a Taoist master who recognizes potential in the strange monkey. The master teaches him cultivation techniques, meditation, breath control, energy circulation. Sun Wukong learns faster than any previous student. He masters 72 transformations, allowing him to change shape at will, become a bird, a tree, a rock, a fly. He learns to somersault through clouds, each leap covering 108,000 li, about 54,000 kilometers. He essentially learns to teleport, moving faster than gods designed to manage celestial transportation. But he disrupts classes with his antics, showing off his new powers, disturbing serious students. The master expels him, not for lack of talent, but for having wrong motivations. He seeks power for its own sake, not enlightenment for wisdom's sake. Sun Wukong leaves without understanding the lesson, returns to his mountain with godlike abilities and no wisdom governing their use. His power makes him arrogant. He begins calling himself the great sage equal to heaven, a title no one granted him, a claim to authority that ignores the entire celestial bureaucracy. He hears about a dragon king living in a palace beneath the sea. Dragons hoard magical weapons. Sun Wukong decides he needs one. He descends to the underwater palace and demands a weapon worthy of his status. The Dragon King, a bureaucrat god who manages ocean affairs, tries to placate this strange visitor with various arms. Each weapon Sun Wukong tests and finds inadequate. Too light, too fragile. Not impressive enough. The Dragon King grows desperate, finally showing him a pillar that holds up the ocean itself. It's the Rui Jingu Bang, a magical staff that can change size on command, growing from a needle to a mountain. It weighs 13,500 pounds, far too heavy for anyone to wield. Sun Wukong lifts it easily. He shrinks it, sticks it behind his ear like a toothpick, and leaves, despite the Dragon King's protests. He's just stolen critical infrastructure from the ocean's administrative offices. Next, he needs armor to match his weapon. He intimidates the Dragon King into providing cloud-walking boots, a golden chainmail shirt, and a phoenix feather cap. Then he needs to deal with the bureaucratic problem of death. The Department of Life and Death keeps records of when every being should die. Sun Wukong's name is written in the ledger with a limited lifespan. He's having none of that. He storms into the underworld, not as a dead soul awaiting judgment, but as an intruder demanding to see management. The judges of hell try to explain that rules exist, that lifespans are predetermined, that he can't just erase his mortality. Sun Wukong locates the Register of Life and Death, finds not only his own entry but all monkey entries, and strikes them all out with his brush. Then he leaves, having vandalized heaven's official records and granted himself and his entire species immortality. The Dragon King and the underworld judges file complaints with the Jade Emperor. They describe a chaotic monkey disrupting proper order, stealing weapons, defacing official documents. The Jade Emperor faces a dilemma. He could send armies to suppress this upstart, but that might fail and make heaven look weak. Better to co-opt the troublemaker, bring him into the bureaucracy where he can be controlled. He offers Sun Wukong a position, protector of the horses. It sounds impressive until you realize it's essentially stable duty, a menial job caring for heaven's horses. Sun Wukong accepts, flattered to receive a celestial title, unaware that he's been given the divine equivalent of janitorial work. He performs the job well initially. The horses thrive under his care. But then he learns the truth. Protector of the horses ranks at the bottom of heaven's bureaucracy, the lowest position possible. He's been insulted, patronized, given a nothing job to keep him occupied while real gods do important work. He explodes with rage. He abandons heaven, returns to his mountain, and declares open war on celestial authority. He creates a banner reading "Great Sage equal to heaven" and plants it on his mountain peak, a direct challenge to the Jade Emperor's authority. He's rejecting the entire system, claiming equality with the supreme deity himself. The Jade Emperor sends an army, divine warriors with magical weapons, creatures from cosmic zoos, weather gods with lightning and thunder. 10,000 soldiers march on the mountain of flowers and fruit. Sun Wukong faces them alone, his staff spinning so fast it becomes a blur, his shape-shifting, confusing attackers who strike at monkeys that suddenly become boulders or clouds. He defeats every wave. The heavenly army retreats in disarray. This small monkey, born from a stone with no place in the cosmic hierarchy, has just humiliated heaven's military. The Jade Emperor must escalate or accept defeat. This time, the Emperor tries different tactics. He sends a messenger offering a new position, actually called Great Sage equal to heaven, the title Sun Wukong claimed for himself. It comes with a palace in heaven and nominal high rank. The catch, it's entirely ceremonial, no actual power or responsibilities. It's a bribe, an attempt to pacify him with empty honors while keeping him away from real authority. Sun Wukong accepts, enjoying his new palace and the respect, or appearance of respect, from other gods. He's finally receiving recognition he believes he deserves. But the position comes with restrictions. He can't attend important meetings, he can't access certain heavenly areas. He's honored but contained, celebrated but powerless. The situation is sustainable until the Queen Mother of the West decides to hold her famous Peach Festival, a grand celebration where she serves the peaches of immortality, magical fruit that grows once every 3,000 years and grants eternal life to those already immortal, essentially resetting their lifespan. All important gods receive invitations. Sun Wukong doesn't. His title claims equality with heaven, but heaven doesn't actually treat him as equal. The snub wounds him deeply. If he's truly the great sage, equal to heaven, why isn't he invited to heaven's most important social event? The answer is obvious. His title is performative, a pacifying lie. Heaven humors him while excluding him from actual power circles. He decides to crash the party. He sneaks into the peach garden, eats the unripe peaches, then breaks into the festival preparations and eats the ripe ones. He discovers wine meant for the celebration and drinks it. He finds pills of immortality prepared by Laozi, magical medicine that grants additional layers of deathlessness, and eats those too. At this point, Sun Wukong has consumed multiple types of immortality-granting substances. He's achieved immortality through Taoist cultivation, through eating the peaches, through drinking the special wine, through devouring Laozi's pills, and through erasing his name from the death register. He's the most immortal being in existence, layered with redundant deathlessness, like someone wearing 5 bulletproof vests. He realizes what he's done and panics. He's vandalized heaven's most sacred event, stolen the Queen Mother's precious peaches, consumed medicine intended for the highest gods. The punishment will be severe. Instead of facing judgment, he flees back to his mountain, deciding that open rebellion is preferable to whatever punishment the Jade Emperor would devise. This time, the response is overwhelming. The Jade Emperor sends 100,000 heavenly soldiers. Commanders known for capturing demons and subduing monsters lead the armies. The operation is designed to crush the rebellion decisively, to demonstrate that even the most powerful individual cannot defy heaven's collective might. The battle lasts days. Sun Wukong's staff crushes divine armor. His transformations confuse trackers. His speed makes targeting him nearly impossible. He clones himself by pulling out hairs and blowing on them, creating thousands of identical monkeys that swarm the heavenly forces. The armies gain ground, then lose it, then gain it again. Neither side can achieve decisive victory. Finally, heaven deploys its champions, gods specifically designed for combat, beings whose entire purpose is defeating threats to celestial order. Erlang Shen, the three-eyed truth-seeing god, joins the battle. He can see through Sun Wukong's transformations, matching him trick for trick, form for form. When Sun Wukong becomes a temple, Erlang becomes a hungry pilgrim. When Sun Wukong becomes a fish, Erlang becomes a fisherman. But even Erlang can't capture him alone. The battle continues until Laozi, watching from above, drops his diamond ring, a magical restraint that falls on Sun Wukong's head and stuns him long enough for heavenly soldiers to bind him with divine chains. Finally, after weeks of fighting, the Monkey King is captured. They bring him before the Jade Emperor for judgment. The Emperor wants him executed, but there's a problem. Sun Wukong is too immortal to be destroyed. They try beheading him. The blade shatters. They try burning him. The flames don't touch him. They try various magical methods of execution, each one failing against his accumulated immortality. Someone suggests the furnace of 8 trigrams, Laozi's alchemical device used for refining pills of immortality. Perhaps 49 days in those flames will burn away his accumulated protections. They seal Sun Wukong inside and begin the process. Fire roaring, cosmic forces pressing against his multiplied immortality. 49 days pass. The furnace opens. Instead of ash, Sun Wukong emerges stronger. The flames gave him additional power, fiery golden vision that lets him see through illusions and identify demons. The furnace, meant to destroy him, became another source of enhancement. He breaks free and resumes his rampage through heaven, now angrier and more powerful than before. He fights his way toward the Jade Emperor's throne room, intent on overthrowing the entire celestial bureaucracy. Nothing heaven possesses can stop him. The Great Rebellion seems on the verge of success. Then Buddha arrives. Journey to the West, pilgrimage is cosmic comedy. Buddha descends from the Western paradise, where he presides over Pure Land Buddhism. His entrance shifts the entire cosmic register. This isn't just another powerful god joining the fight, but a figure who operates on a different ontological level. The Jade Emperor governs through bureaucracy. Buddha transcends bureaucracy itself. He finds Sun Wukong mid-rampage, having just scattered another group of heavenly warriors. Buddha doesn't attack or threaten. He simply asks, "What do you want?" Sun Wukong, staff still raised for battle, answers honestly. He wants to be the Jade Emperor. He believes he's earned it through power and audacity. The current system is corrupt, inefficient, unfair. He could do better. The throne should belong to whoever is strongest, and he's proven himself strongest. Buddha makes a wager. If Sun Wukong can jump out of his palm, Buddha will support his claim to heaven's throne. The Jade Emperor will be forced to abdicate, and the Monkey King will become the supreme deity. But if Sun Wukong fails, he must accept punishment, cease his rebellion. Sun Wukong laughs. Buddha's hand looks ordinary-sized. One of Sun Wukong's somersault jumps covers 108,000 li. He could cross the universe in a handful of leaps. Jumping out of someone's palm is trivial. He agrees to the wager, positions himself in Buddha's hand, and leaps. He somersaults through space, clouds blurring past, reality streaming by. He travels for what feels like hours, covering incomprehensible distances, until he reaches what appears to be the edge of reality, five massive pillars rising into darkness. He's done it. He's reached the boundary of existence itself. To prove he's been there, he writes his name on the middle pillar. The great sage equal to heaven was here. Then, for good measure, he urinates at the base of the pillar. Let the cosmos remember his defiance. He somersaults back to Buddha's hand, landing with confident swagger. He's won the wager. Heaven's throne is his. Buddha smiles and holds up his hand. On his middle finger is written, "The great sage, equal to heaven, was here." And the base of Buddha's thumb shows evidence of Sun Wukong's territorial marking. The five pillars weren't the edge of reality. They were Buddha's five fingers. Sun Wukong never left Buddha's palm. His greatest leap, his impossible speed, his transcendent power, all of it insufficient to escape the hand of someone who understands that infinity contains all finite distances, that ultimate reality can't be reached through mere movement. Sun Wukong realizes he's been humbled in the most profound way possible, not defeated through superior force, but shown that his entire framework for understanding power is limited. Buddha wasn't competing, he was teaching. The punishment comes swiftly. Buddha flips his hand and transforms it into a mountain that pins Sun Wukong beneath it. The mountain, called Five Elements Mountain, sits on the Monkey King's body, too heavy to lift, too solid to tunnel through, too vast to circumvent. A seal goes on top, 6 golden characters that prevent escape. There, Sun Wukong will remain for 500 years. This pause in the Monkey King's story gives us context for what comes next. 5 centuries pass, dynasties rise and fall. The Tang dynasty establishes itself in China, bringing relative stability after periods of chaos. Buddhism has spread from India, gaining converts, building temples, translating texts. The faith is established but not yet fully integrated with Chinese cosmology. A Buddhist monk appears. History knows him as Xuanzang, a real figure who lived during the Tang dynasty and whose journey to India seeking authentic Buddhist sutras became legend. The mythological version, Tripitaka in the story, is assigned a divine mission: travel to the Western paradise, retrieve authentic Buddhist scriptures, return to China to enlighten the people. It's an impossible journey. The route crosses deserts, mountains, territories controlled by demons who eat human flesh to extend their lifespans. A human monk traveling alone would die within days. Tripitaka needs bodyguards, companions powerful enough to protect him while keeping him on track when his human weaknesses threaten the mission. The mission's sponsors, Guanyin, the bodhisattva of compassion, working with the Jade Emperor's reluctant blessing, have an idea. Several powerful beings have been punished for various transgressions and sit imprisoned or cursed. What if these beings could earn redemption through service? What if their punishment could be transformed into a quest? First among these is Sun Wukong, 500 years into his imprisonment beneath the mountain. Guanyin visits him with an offer: escort the monk to the west, protect him throughout the journey, deliver him safely to retrieve the scriptures. In exchange, Sun Wukong will be freed and his crimes forgiven. His rebellious nature will be channeled toward enlightenment rather than destruction. Sun Wukong agrees instantly. 500 years under a mountain teaches patience even to monkeys. The seal is removed. The mountain lifts. He emerges, not weakened, but somehow chastened. The journey ahead gives his power purpose beyond mere display. But Guanyin is smart enough to know that Sun Wukong's agreement won't last the first time he gets annoyed with Tripitaka's slow pace and nagging virtue. She gives the monk a golden headband and instructs him to trick Sun Wukong into wearing it. Once on, the headband cannot be removed, and when Tripitaka recites a certain sutra, the band tightens, causing excruciating headaches. It's a leash. A divine shock collar. Sun Wukong realizes this within days of setting out when he kills a group of bandits threatening Tripitaka, and Tripitaka, soft-hearted, committed to nonviolence, recites the sutra in horror. Sun Wukong's head feels like it's splitting. He begs for mercy. Tripitaka stops chanting, but the message is clear: you're stronger, but I control you. Their relationship becomes the story's heart. Sun Wukong is powerful, pragmatic, experienced. He can see through demon disguises, anticipates ambushes, solves problems through force or cleverness. Tripitaka is weak, naive, stubborn. He can't distinguish demons from humans, insists on peaceful solutions even when violence is necessary, and frequently fires Sun Wukong for being too violent, only to be captured by the demons. Sun Wukong warned him about. Two more companions joined the pilgrimage. Jubaji, Pigzi in English translations, was once Tian Peng, the marshal of the heavenly canopy, commander of a celestial navy, but got drunk at a banquet and sexually harassed the moon goddess. His punishment, reincarnation as a pig demon. He's lazy, gluttonous, lustful, cowardly, and obsessed with eating and sleeping, yet he has enormous strength and fights effectively when properly motivated. Sha Wujing, Sandy or Friar Sand, was once the curtain-lifting general, a high-ranking military officer in heaven. He broke a precious vase during a celestial banquet and was exiled to the mortal realm, transformed into a river ogre. He's the group's stable element, loyal, hardworking, uncomplaining, though not particularly bright or creative. Together, they're a disaster of personality conflicts. Sun Wukong is arrogant and aggressive. Tripitaka is sanctimonious and fragile. Pigzi is lazy and scheming. Sandy is dutiful but passive. They bicker constantly. Pigzi regularly suggests abandoning the mission and eating Tripitaka, whose flesh, as a holy monk, would grant immortality. Sun Wukong threatens to leave whenever Tripitaka uses the headband. Tripitaka threatens to recite the sutra whenever Sun Wukong displays independence. Yet they progress westward, facing challenge after challenge. The demons they encounter aren't random monsters. They're cosmic bureaucracies, failures, and oversights. Many are escaped celestial pets, magic animals that fled heaven and now terrorize Earth. Others are fallen officials, gods who violated regulations and got demoted. A few are spirits who gained power through cultivation and decided preying on humans was easier than continuing spiritual discipline. The pattern repeats. Demon captures Tripitaka intending to eat him. Sun Wukong must rescue him. Fighting proves difficult because the demon has some powerful artifact or ally. Sun Wukong eventually identifies the demon's heavenly origin, appeals to the demon's original owner superior in heaven. That figure descends and reclaims their property's subordinate. Everyone continues forward. This structure satirizes bureaucracy mercilessly. Heaven's management is incompetent. They lose track of powerful entities, fail to secure dangerous artifacts, don't notice when subordinates escape. The demons often have legitimate grievances against Heaven's administration. They were punished too harshly, promoted too slowly, disrespected despite loyal service. Their rebellion mirrors Sun Wukong's, but they lack his power to make it stick. One demon, the Bull Demon King, is Sun Wukong's sworn brother from before his imprisonment. They were friends, equals in power, partners in mischief. Now, Sun Wukong is on a redemptive quest while the Bull Demon King still lives as a bandit lord. Their reunion forces Sun Wukong to confront who he was versus who he's becoming. The Bull Demon King mocks the pilgrimage. Why serve heaven after heaven imprisoned you? Why help the system that crushed your rebellion? Sun Wukong doesn't have good answers. He's not truly reformed. He still resents authority, still believes he was wronged. But he's committed to the journey now, has given his word, has begun caring about Tripitaka despite the monk's infuriating qualities. It's not enlightenment yet, but it's movement towards something beyond pure selfishness. The journey's teaching methodology is behavioral rather than intellectual. Tripitaka tries teaching Sun Wukong Buddhist philosophy, emptiness, compassion, non-attachment. Sun Wukong finds it boring and abstract. But through repeated scenarios where his violent solutions create problems, where his arrogance endangers others, where his impatience wastes time, he gradually internalizes lessons he wouldn't accept as lectures. Pigzi provides comic relief, but also represents base human desires that must be managed rather than eliminated. He never stops being lazy or gluttonous, but he channels these traits more constructively. He fights when needed despite preferring sleep. He shares food despite preferring to hoard it. He's not enlightened, he's adequately disciplined, which for some people is achievement enough. Sandy represents simple faith and loyalty. He's not smart enough for philosophical enlightenment, but he's committed enough to keep walking, keep protecting Tripitaka, keep performing his role without questioning. Different beings reach enlightenment through different paths, and Sandy's path is service without complaint. Tripitaka, despite being the mission's center, is the least interesting character. He's virtue incarnate, almost a symbol rather than a person. He represents the destination, purity, compassion, enlightenment, but he's not particularly compelling as an individual. The narrative keeps trying to make him interesting by having him doubt, make mistakes, suffer crises of faith, but he always returns to baseline holiness. The real story is Sun Wukong's gradual transformation from chaos bringer to something resembling a bodhisattva. It's not linear progress. He backslides, gets angry, threatens to abandon the mission. But each challenge slightly reshapes him, filing down his sharpest edges while leaving his essential monkey nature intact. After 81 tribulations, the number significant in both Buddhist and Taoist numerology, they reach the Western paradise. They prostrate before Buddha and receive the authentic sutras. The scriptures are written in Sanskrit, which none of them can read, but that's fine. Their value is symbolic more than literal. They've become enlightened through the journey itself. The scriptures merely prove completion. Buddha grants rewards. Tripitaka becomes the Buddha of merit, elevated to Buddhahood for his suffering and persistence. Sandy becomes a golden arhat, a high-ranking enlightened being. Pigsy becomes cleanser of the altars, a minor divine position that basically allows him to eat offerings left at Buddhist temples, a perfect reward for someone motivated primarily by food. Sun Wukong receives the title Buddha Victorious in strife, recognition that his nature is combative, but combat can serve enlightenment when directed properly. His rebellious energy isn't destroyed, just redirected. He's still fundamentally himself, still recognizable as the stone monkey who defied heaven, but now his power serves rather than disrupts. The headband finally disappears. Sun Wukong touches his head in surprise. It's gone, and he didn't even notice when it vanished. Perhaps it left when he stopped needing it, when control externalized became discipline internalized. Or perhaps it was never truly there, just a teaching device that could be discarded once the lesson was learned. The pilgrims return to China, scriptures in hand, their mission complete. The story has moved from comedy to something deeper, a tale about transformation, about how even the most chaotic beings can find purpose, about how the journey changes travelers regardless of the destination. Sun Wukong's story resonates because he represents everything Chinese bureaucratic society tried to suppress: spontaneity, irreverence, individual power challenging institutional authority. Yet even he couldn't escape the system entirely. Buddha's hand contained him. The mountain imprisoned him. The headband controlled him. But none of these constraints destroyed him. They channeled him, directed him, taught him that power without purpose is just noise. The myth operates on multiple levels simultaneously. Surface level, entertaining adventure story with magic and monsters. Allegorical level, Buddhist teaching tale about enlightenment through suffering. Political level, satire of bureaucratic incompetence and institutional corruption. Philosophical level, exploration of how order and chaos can be reconciled rather than locked in permanent conflict. Journey to the West synthesizes Chinese and Indian cosmologies, showing how Buddhism adapted to Chinese culture rather than replacing it. The Jade Emperor remains supreme in his domain. Buddha operates in his. They cooperate when necessary, maintaining separate but interconnected bureaucracies. Sun Wukong moves between both worlds, never fully belonging to either, which gives him unique perspective and unique freedom. His story ends not with absolute enlightenment or complete submission to authority, but with something in between, a powerful being who learned that true strength includes knowing when not to fight, that real freedom sometimes looks like chosen service, that the greatest rebellion might be transforming the system from within rather than trying to shatter it from without. The stone monkey is now a Buddha, but he's still a monkey, still capable of mischief, still carrying his staff, still ready to fight if fighting serves a worthy cause. He's been domesticated just enough to function within cosmic order, while retaining enough wildness to remind order that its boundaries aren't as solid as it pretends. Heaven survived his rebellion, but it learned that power alone can't maintain order. Sometimes you need to accommodate the unruly, give them purpose, let them think they're still free, even while you guide them toward outcomes that serve everyone. And sometimes the unruly need to learn that eternal opposition gets exhausting, that everyone eventually wants to belong to something larger than themselves, even if they'll never admit that's what they're seeking. The pilgrimage is complete. The scriptures are delivered. The cosmos has absorbed yet another threat and transformed it into structure. Balance is restored, though a different balance than existed before. One that accommodates a bit more chaos, a bit more monkey energy, a bit more laughter at pompous authorities' expense. The White Snake and the Love That Shook a Mountain. A woman walks through Hangzhou's morning mist. Her name is Bai Suzhen, white robes, graceful beyond measure. She smiles at the boatmen ferrying passengers across West Lake. No one knows she's been alive for 1,000 years. No one knows that beneath her human skin, coils wrap around coils. A white snake, practicing cultivation in the mountains, has achieved something rare. Human form, human desires. She meets Xu on a bridge. He's a physician's assistant. Gentle, ordinary. Everything about him whispers safety, kindness, the simple warmth of mortal life. She falls in love. This is where the trouble starts. The tale of Bai Suzhen emerges during the Song dynasty, though its roots dig deeper. Different versions scatter across centuries, but the core remains consistent. A white snake spirit achieves immortality through discipline and meditation. She descends into the human world. She wants to experience love, not divine love, not cosmic union, the messy, complicated, doomed love between mortals. She brings her companion, Shao Qing, a green snake, younger, fiercer. Together, they open a medicine shop in Hangzhou. Bai Suzhen's knowledge of herbs spans centuries. People come from across the region seeking cures. Xu works beside her, unaware. They marry. The wedding happens beneath willows, lanterns swaying in evening wind. Bai Suzhen wears red. She has waited 1,000 years for this moment. But immortals marrying mortals violates cosmic order. Enter Fa Hai, a Buddhist monk, keeper of divine law. He sees through Bai Suzhen's disguise immediately. To him, she's chaos-wearing silk, a demon corrupting a pure mortal soul. He warns Xu, "Your wife is not human." Xu laughs. Impossible. His wife heals the sick. She's gentle, devoted. The monk must be mistaken. Fa Hai persists. During the Dragon Boat Festival, he gives Xu real gar wine. "Have your wife drink this," he says. "If she's human, nothing happens. If she's a demon," Xu hesitates, but festival custom demands it. He offers the cup to Bai Suzhen. She knows what it contains. Real gar wine forces snake spirits to reveal their true form. She could refuse, make excuses. Instead, she drinks. Love means vulnerability. She chooses trust over caution. The wine hits her system. Her human form wavers, scales ripple beneath skin, and Xu, turning to speak to her, sees not his wife, a massive white serpent coiled where she sat. He collapses, dead from shock. Now Bai Suzhen faces the oldest bargain. Her husband lies lifeless because she loved him, because she trusted him, because she revealed herself. She could flee, return to the mountains, resume her cultivation. Instead, she ascends to Kunlun Mountain. The journey nearly destroys her. Pregnant with Xu Xian's child, weakened by the real gar wine, she fights through celestial guardians. She needs the Lingji mushroom, a herb of resurrection found only in the immortal realm. The guardians try to stop her. This violates heaven's order, they say. She fights them anyway. This is where the story shifts. Bai Suzhen isn't pursuing enlightenment anymore. She's not seeking immortality or cosmic wisdom. She's fighting for something smaller, stranger, the right to love someone who's her true form and couldn't bear it. She wins the mushroom, returns to Hangzhou, revives Xu. He wakes in her arms, confused. She's human again. "You had a nightmare." She tells him, nothing more. He wants to believe her. Mortals always do, but Fa Hai won't relent. He sees Bai Suzhen's pregnancy, her continued presence among humans, an abomination he calls it, half human, half demon offspring. He confronts her at the medicine shop. "You've violated natural law," he declares. "Return to your true form. Leave the mortal world." Bai Suzhen refuses. What follows is one of Chinese mythology's great battles, not God against God. Not cosmic forces reshaping reality. A pregnant snake spirit against a Buddhist monk fighting above West Lake. The waters rise, flooding Hangzhou's streets, drowning homes and temples. Bai Suzhen summons every creature of river and lake, crabs, fish, shrimp. Armies of water dwellers crash against Fa Hai's golden light. Shao Qing fights beside her, green scales flashing. But Fa Hai wields something stronger than martial skill. He carries heaven's mandate, divine authority. The cosmic order that says spirits belong in one realm, humans in another. He produces a golden bowl, alms bowl, simple Buddhist implement. He inverts it over Bai Suzhen. She's trapped. Fahai imprisons her beneath Leifeng Pagoda, a structure built specifically to contain her. You'll remain here, he says, until the lake dries and the pagoda crumbles, essentially forever. Xu watching his wife sealed away, finally understands. She was never human, but she loved him anyway, fought heaven itself for him. He becomes a monk, not to serve Fahai's order, to be closer to the pagoda where his wife waits. Years pass. Bai Sujin gives birth inside her prison, a son, Xu Shilin. Guards take the infant away, raised by relatives. He grows up not knowing his mother, becomes a brilliant scholar, tops the imperial examinations, returns to Hangzhou as a decorated official. There are versions where Xu Shilin discovers the truth, learns his mother waits beneath Leifeng Pagoda. He uses his official authority, his filial devotion, to petition heaven. Some tellings have Xiaoqing returning, more powerful now, her cultivation advanced. She shatters the pagoda. Frees by Sujin. Other versions leave her imprisoned until the pagoda naturally collapses centuries later. But the story's power isn't in its ending. It's in what Bai Sujin represents. Female desire, female power, female choice. She's an immortal who could have achieved enlightenment, could have transcended the mortal realm entirely. Instead, she chose love. Messy, complicated, doomed mortal love. The story asks uncomfortable questions. Is Fahai righteous or cruel? He maintains cosmic order, prevents chaos, but he destroys a family, imprisons a devoted wife. Is Bai Sujin a demon deceiving a mortal, or an immortal brave enough to want something beyond cultivation? Chinese audiences have debated this for centuries. Modern adaptations often cast Fahai as the villain, rigid, authoritarian, a stand-in for institutional power crushing individual happiness, but traditional readings see tragedy, not villainy. Fahai does his duty. Bai Sujin violates natural law. Xu suffers for loving something beyond his understanding. Nobody wins. Everyone loses something precious. The tale spread through opera first. Performances during the Ming and Qing dynasties, with elaborate costumes and stylized movement. Bai Sujin's transformation scenes required intricate choreography. Actors trained for years to capture her dual nature. Later, the story migrated to novels, films, television series. Each generation reimagines her struggle. Some versions emphasize Buddhist philosophy. Attachment causes suffering. Bai Sujin's love becomes her prison, literally. Other interpretations focus on Taoist elements: cultivation, immortality, the pursuit of the Tao. Bai Sujin fails because she abandons her practice for mortal concerns. But the most enduring reading is simpler. She wanted to be human, wanted to experience human love, human vulnerability, human joy. She succeeded. For a brief, shining moment, she was mortal enough to marry, to conceive, to hope. Then heaven crushed her for it. The White Snake legend persists because it captures something essential about desire and consequence, about choosing connection over transcendence, about love's terrible price when realms collide. Bai Sujin could have been a goddess. Instead, she chose to be a wife, and paid for it with centuries of imprisonment. That's the story's tragedy. Also its defiance, because even trapped beneath Leifeng Pagoda, even separated from everything she fought for, she never regrets loving Xu Xian. That's the part that makes audiences weep. Not her defeat, her conviction. She'd do it again. The demon slayer who failed the imperial exam. Picture Chang'an during the Tang Dynasty. A young man climbs the steps to the imperial examination hall. His name is Zhang Kui. He's studied for years, memorized the classics, mastered calligraphy, absorbed philosophy until the texts live in his mind. He's also ugly, profoundly, notably ugly. This shouldn't matter. The examinations test knowledge, not appearance. Merit over birth, wisdom over beauty. That's the promise of China's civil service system. Zhang Kui believes this promise. He enters the hall, writes his examination. His calligraphy flows perfect. His essays demonstrate deep understanding. He quotes Confucius, analyzes history, proposes governance solutions with clarity and insight. He passes. Top marks. The emperor himself will award him the highest honor. Zhuangyuan, the examination champion. His future is assured. Official robes, prestigious appointments, respect from every scholar in the empire. He stands before the emperor, waiting for recognition. The emperor looks at his face and recoils. Too ugly, the emperor declares. This face cannot represent the empire, cannot stand in court, cannot serve as model for younger scholars. The honor is revoked. Zhongkui's years of study, his perfect examination, his mastery of classical knowledge, all dismissed because his features don't match courtly aesthetics. He walks to the palace steps and throws himself down them. His head strikes stone again. Again. He doesn't stop until his skull cracks, until blood pools beneath him. He chooses annihilation over humiliation. Here's where mythology trams tragedy into purpose. Zhongkui dies, but death in Chinese cosmology isn't always final, especially for those who perish unjustly, carrying fury that won't dissipate. The Jade Emperor watches this suicide, sees the waste, a brilliant mind destroyed by vanity and aesthetic prejudice. He offers Zhongkui a position, not in the mortal bureaucracy, in the celestial one. Demon hunter, exorcist, the scholar who couldn't serve the living emperor becomes enforcer for the divine one. Zhongkui accepts. He returns to the mortal realm during ghost festivals, during New Year celebrations, wherever demons and malicious spirits gather. His appearance, the same ugliness that cost him everything, now terrifies supernatural beings. He wields a sword, his scholarly robes become battle gear, and he hunts. The irony is perfect. The face that made him unfit for court makes him ideal for demon slaying. Spirits flee from his ugliness. His appearance becomes weapon. Different texts describe Zhongkui differently. Some show him as fearsome, bulging eyes and wild beard. Others depict him as dignified despite his features. Deft scholarly bearing maintained even in battle. Most agree on certain details. He wears official robes, carries classical texts. His sword bears inscriptions from Confucian teachings. He's still a scholar, still values learning, order, merit. He just serves a different court now. The legend spreads across dynasties. Families hang Zhongkui paintings during New Year, believing his image wards off evil spirits. Students pray to him before examinations, a bitter saint who understands academic pressure. His story becomes opera. Dramatic performances showing his examination triumph, his rejection, his transformation into demon hunter. Actors paint their faces elaborate colors, making ugliness into fierce beauty. Because that's Zhongkui's secret. His appearance isn't actually ugly. It's powerful, strong, authentic. The emperor who rejected him was the fool. Consider what Zhongkui represents, the scholar rejected by a system that claims to value merit above all. The student who did everything right but lost anyway because of factors beyond his control. Every examination candidate knows this fear, not just in Tang Dynasty China. Everywhere. Always. The terror that your worth will be judged on something superficial, that years of work will collapse because someone doesn't like your face, your voice, your background. Zhongkui embodies that nightmare, and his transformation offers strange comfort. He didn't become emperor, didn't achieve mortal glory, but he found purpose anyway, found a role where his rejection became qualification. Taoist texts adopt him enthusiastically. He appears in rituals, invocations, protective talismans. His name becomes shorthand for righteous fury channeled into divine service. Buddhist traditions acknowledge him less directly. But he appears in folk Buddhism, that hybrid practice mixing classical doctrine with local spirits and legends. Common people love Zhongkui most, not philosophers or officials. Regular families who understand rejection, who've watched merit systems fail, who need protection from both demons and corrupt bureaucrats. They paint his face on doors, wear his image as amulets, tell his story to children as warning, and promise both. Warning, the world isn't fair. Systems fail. Even merit doesn't guarantee justice. Promise, failure isn't final. Rejection can redirect you toward your actual purpose. Zhongkui becomes patron of the overlooked, the passed over. Everyone whose face doesn't fit, whose background isn't right, whose talent gets ignored because they don't match expectations. Modern scholars debate his historical basis. Did a real Zhongkui exist? Was there actually a Tang examination candidate who took his own life after being rejected? Probably not. The story likely emerged later, crystallizing around anxieties about the examination system, around fears of arbitrary judgment. But historical accuracy misses the point. Zhongkui's truth isn't factual, it's emotional. He's what rejected scholars wish they could become. Powerful despite dismissal, valuable despite rejection, serving a higher authority than the one that spurned them. His sword cuts down demons, but symbolically it cuts through pretense, through systems that claim fairness while practicing prejudice. Every ghost he vanquishes represents a small victory over arbitrary judgment. The visual tradition surrounding Zhongkui is fascinating. Artists compete to capture his essential ugliness becoming power. His face must repel but also command respect. Some paintings show him drunk, celebrating with smaller demons he's recruited. Others depict him stern, judging spirits with scholarly precision. The best images capture both scholar and warrior, ugly and magnificent, rejected and essential. He hangs in homes during festivals, sword raised, robes flowing. Children aren't frightened, they're reassured. Demons fear him, that means families can sleep safely. Students facing examinations pray to him specifically. They understand his pain, they know the stakes, they need his protection not just from demons, but from the arbitrary cruelty of evaluation systems. Sometimes they pass, sometimes they fail. Either way, Zhang Kui's story reminds them failure is transformation's first step. His legend persists because it addresses something timeless, the gap between merit and recognition, between what you deserve and what you receive. Chinese civilization built an entire bureaucracy on merit-based examination. For over 1,000 years, the system theoretically allowed anyone to rise based on knowledge alone. But theory and practice always diverge. Bias creeps in. Appearance matters. Connections help. Zhongkui is the system's shadow, the truth it can't acknowledge. Merit alone isn't enough. But his resurrection offers hope anyway. Not that the system will fix itself, that rejected scholars can find meaning despite it. He failed the imperial examination, then became something greater than any official. He serves heaven now, the ultimate promotion. That's the story Chinese students whisper to themselves during examination anxiety. When they're certain they've failed, when they're sure their face or background will cost them everything. Zhongkui failed too, and he's still hunting demons 1,000 years later. The 8 immortals, drunks, hermits, and holy fools. They gather at a wine shop. 8 figures, mismatched and strange, an old man with an iron crutch, a beautiful woman carrying a lotus flower, a scholar in tattered robes, a beggar with a bamboo drum. They're immortals. They've achieved what billions seek, transcendence, eternal life, freedom from death and decay, and they're getting absolutely drunk. The 8 immortals, Baxian in Chinese, represent Taoism's most playful tradition. They're not solemn sages dispensing wisdom from mountain peaks. They're weird, funny, flawed beings who stumbled into immortality through bizarre paths. Each one breaks expectations. Start with Lu Dongbin, most famous of the 8, a scholar who could have pursued conventional success. Instead, he met an immortal in a wine shop who showed him the emptiness of worldly achievement. Lu saw his future in a dream, rising through examinations, achieving high office, gaining wealth and respect. Then disgrace, exile, loss of everything. He woke up and abandoned scholarly ambitions immediately, took up the sword instead, became a wandering Taoist, lacked learning alchemy and internal cultivation, achieved immortality through discipline and meditation. But he never lost his love for wine, travel, and mischief. Stories show him disguised as a beggar, testing mortals' compassion, or appearing in scholars' dreams, offering cryptic guidance. He's what happens when Confucian education meets Taoist freedom, the scholar who walked away from the whole system. Then there's Iron Crutch Lai, ugly, crippled, perpetually drunk. According to legend, he was once handsome and whole. His spirit left his body to attend a celestial meeting. He instructed his disciple, "If I don't return in 7 days, burn my body." 6 days passed. The disciple's mother fell ill. He rushed home to help her, burning Li's body first. Lai's spirit returned on the 7th day. No body left. Just the corpse of a recently deceased beggar, ugly, lame, starving. He occupied it anyway, became Iron Crutch Li, learned that physical form doesn't matter. Beauty is illusion. He carries a gourd of medicine, healing the sick despite his appearance. The ugliest immortal, the most compassionate. Xianggu represents something different. The only woman among the 8. She achieves immortality by eating mother of pearl and moonbeams, refuses marriage, rejects conventional female roles. She carries a lotus flower, symbol of purity emerging from mud. Her presence among the 8 challenges assumptions about who can achieve transcendence. Not just male scholars, not just mountain hermits, women too, following their own paths. Cao Guoju was born to privilege. His brother was Empress's relative. He could have lived in luxury, wielding political power. Instead, his brother committed terrible crimes. Cao Guoju, ashamed of his family's corruption, gave away his wealth, retreated to mountains. He meets Zhongli Quan and Lu Dongbin in the wilderness. They test him with questions about the Tao. He points to sky, then his heart. The Tao is there, he says, and here. They accept him. He achieves immortality by abandoning privilege, choosing principle over comfort. Lan Kaihe is the strangest, gender ambiguous, sometimes depicted as man, sometimes woman, sometimes neither. Wears one shoe, leaves one foot bare, sings in markets, acting foolish while dispensing profound wisdom. Nobody knows Lan Kaihe's background. The mystery is the point. Immortality isn't about credentials or origin stories. It's about transcending categories entirely. Han Xiangzi, another scholar who rejected conventional success. He's Lu Dongbin's student, could have achieved official rank through examinations, chose the flute instead, chose music, nature, wandering freedom. His flute playing charms animals, makes flowers bloom out of season. He represents art as spiritual practice, beauty as path to transcendence. Zhang Guolao rides backward on a white mule. The mule folds up like paper when not needed, tucked into Zhang's pocket. He travels backward through time, seeing the future by facing the past. He's ancient, possibly thousands of years old. Emperors invite him to court. He declines. Immortality means freedom from authority, even imperial authority. Finally, Zhongli Quan, the eldest, teacher to several others, a general who fought in battles before discovering Taoism's internal alchemy. He gave up military glory for spiritual cultivation, achieved immortality through breathing techniques, meditation, physical practices. He carries a fan that revives the dead. Not always, not reliably, but sometimes when it matters, when the person deserves another chance. Together, these 8 wander China, sometimes separately, sometimes as a group. They cross oceans by throwing their symbolic objects on water and riding them like boats. This is the famous 8 immortals cross the sea story. Each uses their unique implement. Lu's sword, Li's crutch, Heishangu's lotus, Lan Kaihe's flower basket. They're challenged by the Dragon King's son, who captures Lan Kaihe. The other 7 wage war against the underwater palace. It's absurd. Cosmic battle over essentially nothing. But that's the point. Immortals don't fight for territory or power. They fight for each other, for principle, for the joy of conflict itself. They win, obviously. They're immortal. But victory isn't the story's purpose. The purpose is showing 8 completely different paths to the same destination. 8 personalities, 8 backgrounds, 8 approaches to cultivation, all achieving transcendence anyway. Taoism, unlike more rigid systems, celebrates multiplicity. There's no single correct path, no examination to pass, no orthodoxy to follow. Want to study alchemy? Fine. Prefer meditation? Good. Like sword practice? Excellent. Want to get drunk and play flute in markets? Also valid. The 8 immortals embody this flexibility. They prove that immortality isn't restricted to one type of person. Poor or rich, beautiful or ugly, male, female, or ambiguous, scholar or soldier or beggar. Anyone can achieve it. The path adjusts to the traveler. This made the 8 immortals enormously popular, not with philosophers or priests, with common people, because everyone sees themselves in at least one immortal. The struggling student recognizes Lu Dongbin. The poor recognize Iron Crutch Li. Women see He Xianggu. Those rejecting family pressure identify with Cao Guoju. They appear everywhere in Chinese culture: paintings, opera, festivals, decorations. Birthday celebrations often feature the 8 crossing the sea, symbol of wishing someone longevity and good fortune. Temples dedicate space to them. Prayers ask for their intervention. Each immortal has specialty areas. Lu Dongbin for scholarly success, He Xianggu for female practitioners, Li for healing. But they're also grouped together. Collective wisdom, collective protection. Taoist practice embraced them because they make immortality seem achievable. Not distant, not impossible, just different, requiring dedication but not perfection. The 8 immortals get drunk, they argue, they make mistakes, they're flawed beings who achieve transcendence anyway. That's revolutionary. Most religious traditions demand purity, discipline, correct behavior. Taoism says, be authentic, follow your nature. The Tao accommodates all paths. The 8 immortals prove it. Modern scholarship traces their development across dynasties. They didn't appear as a complete group until the Song dynasty. Individual immortals existed earlier in various texts. Someone, possibly several someones, collected them into one narrative, recognized their symbolic power together. The number 8 matters. In Chinese numerology, 8 represents prosperity, infinity, completion. The 8 trigrams of the I Ching, 8 directions, 8 Buddhist treasures. 8 immortals complete a cosmic pattern. Their adventures continue in folk tales, novels, operas. Each generation adds new stories. The immortals visit new places, solve new problems, encounter new challenges. Because they're immortal, the stories never have to end. They're still out there, theoretically, wandering China, appearing to worthy seekers, offering guidance, testing virtue, distributing blessings. You won't recognize them. That's part of the tradition. Immortals disguise themselves. The beggar asking for food might be Iron Crutch Li. The drunk scholar might be Lu Dongbin. Treat everyone with compassion. You never know. That's the 8 immortals lesson. Not about achieving immortality. Most people won't. About living with authenticity, following your path, accepting others' different paths. About finding transcendence in ordinary moments. Wine shared with friends. Music played under stars. Kindness offered to strangers. The 8 immortals achieved something extraordinary, but they're still getting drunk at wine shops, laughing at cosmic jokes, still human, despite immortality, maybe because of it. The Queen Mother of the West and the Forbidden Peaches, Mount Kunlun rises beyond mortal reach, the highest peak, the cosmic axis where heaven meets earth. Paradise of immortals, guarded by jade barriers and celestial armies. At its summit, a palace. In that palace, a garden. In that garden, a tree, the peach tree of immortality. Its keeper, Shiwangmu, Queen Mother of the West. Tree dates older than most gods, predates the neat hierarchies and bureaucratic structures later traditions imposed. In earliest texts, she's wild, dangerous, tiger teeth, leopard tail, keeper of plagues and punishments. Later dynasties softened her, made her elegant, dignified, cosmic empress presiding over female immortals. But her power never diminished. She controls the ultimate prize, the peaches that grant eternal life. These aren't ordinary peaches. They ripen once every 3,000 years. The tree produces a limited number. When they're ready, Shiwangmu hosts a banquet, the Peach Banquet. Pantao Hui. Every immortal wants an invitation. It's the celestial social event, but more than that, it's necessity. Even gods need renewal. The peaches maintain immortality, prevent decay. Miss the banquet, and eternity starts looking shorter. Shiwangmu decides who attends. She holds absolute authority over immortality itself. The Jade Emperor may run heaven's bureaucracy, but she controls whether beings stay immortal. That's real power. Her mythology stretches back to the Shang dynasty. Oracle bones mention a Western mother deity. Early texts describe her realm, mountains of jade, palaces of gold, gardens of impossible beauty. She lives alone, initially. No consort, no subordination, just her powers, her mountain. Later traditions pair her with the Jade Emperor, make them cosmic couple, yin and yang balanced. Heaven's bureaucracy becomes family business, but older stories remember her independence. She wasn't anyone's wife. She was her own authority. The peach tree becomes central to countless legends. Sun Wukong, the Monkey King, crashes her banquet, eats every peach, steals immortality pills, creates cosmic chaos. His rebellion targets her directly because she represents the thing he craves most. Eternal life, recognition among gods. He gets both, eventually. But not through theft, through discipline, redemption, Buddhist enlightenment. The peaches can't be stolen. That's the story's lesson. Immortality isn't fruit you grab, it's state you earn. Other tales show mortals seeking the peaches. Heroes who climb Kunlun's slopes, fight through guardians, reach the garden. Most fail. The mountain's dangers overwhelm them. Celestial soldiers stop them. The palace's barriers repel them. A few succeed. Depending on the story, they're granted one peach or refused entirely, or transformed, made worthy, invited to stay in paradise. Shiwangmu tests supplicants, not through combat or cleverness, through character. She sees through pretense, recognizes authentic cultivation. You can't trick your way to immortality, can't charm or bribe or force it. She knows. She's been evaluating souls since time began. Her attendants include two Jade Maidens, mystical birds, guardian beasts. They maintain the garden, prepare the banquets, screen visitors. The palace itself shifts between descriptions. Sometimes it's jade and gold, sometimes crystal. Sometimes it transcends physical materials entirely, built from condensed chi and cosmic light. Geography can't quite capture it. Kunlun exists between realms. Physical mountain, yes, but also metaphysical space. The axis mundi, connecting earth to heaven. Taoist practitioners visualize Kunlun during meditation. Imagine climbing its slopes, approaching Shi Huangmu's palace, requesting her guidance. She appears in their visions, sometimes stern, sometimes compassionate, always testing, always evaluating. Her power over female immortality deserves attention. In traditions where most deities and immortals are male, she governs female transcendence. Women seeking immortality often invoke her specifically. She understands their path, their challenges. She achieved sovereignty without male authority. Historical empresses identified with her. Wu Zetian, China's only female emperor, commissioned Shi Huangmu imagery, associated herself with the Queen Mother's authority. If a woman could rule heaven's paradise, a woman could rule empire. The symbolism extended beyond gender. Shi Huangmu represented the West, land of setting sun. Sunset means transformation, transition between states. Death, transition. Mortality to immortality, transformation. She presides over these boundaries, helps beings cross from one state to another. Her peaches become the mechanism. Eating one doesn't just grant long life, it transforms your fundamental nature, mortality to immortality, decay to permanence. The banquet attendees aren't just celebrating, they're participating in cosmic ritual, renewing their immortal status, confirming their place in heaven's order. Missing the banquet has consequences. Some texts suggest missed invitations indicate falling status. Others imply the peach's effects wear off without renewal. Either way, Shi Huangmu's favor matters. Her displeasure is exile from paradise itself. Modern scholars trace her evolution, from shamanic deity to Taoist goddess to cultural icon. Each dynasty reimagined her, adjusted her attributes, but core elements remained constant. Her mountain, her peaches, her authority over immortality. These aren't negotiable. They define her across millennia. Folk religion adopted her enthusiastically. Temples dedicated to Shi Huangmu spread across China. Women especially prayed to her, for longevity, for children, for protection. She became patron of female power, not just immortality, authority, sovereignty, independence. The Queen Mother who needed no king. Birthday celebrations for Shi Huangmu happened on the third day of the third lunar month. Devotees gathered, made offerings, sought blessings. Her mythology merged with local traditions. Regional variations emerged, but the essentials remained recognizable. Mount Kunlun, Peach Garden, Immortality Banquet. These images saturated Chinese culture, opera performances, narrative paintings, decorative arts. Shi Huangmu's iconography became instantly recognizable. Artists depicted her enthroned, peaches nearby, majestic but approachable, divine but understanding mortal longing, because she remembers transformation, remembers becoming what she is, remembers the journey from wherever she started to cosmic sovereignty. That makes her different from gods born into power. She achieved her position, built it across eons. The peach tree symbolizes this achievement. 3,000 years per harvest. Patient cultivation. Nothing rushed, nothing forced. Immortality can't be hurried. Must ripen in its own time. Shi Huangmu knows this better than anyone. She tends the tree, waits for fruiting, selects worthy recipients. She's gardener and gatekeeper both. Her later synthesis with the Jade Emperor created interesting dynamics. In some texts, they govern together. He handles heaven's bureaucracy. She manages immortality resources, division of cosmic labor, practical arrangement. But it diminished her earlier independence, made her half of a pair instead of sovereign power. Contemporary interpretations reclaim her autonomy, emphasize her pre-existing authority. Her mountain, her peaches, her rules. The Jade Emperor runs heaven's offices. Fine. Shi Huangmu controls who stays immortal. That's better. Her story resonates because it addresses humanity's deepest longing. Not wealth, not power. More time, just more time. To live, to learn, to love, to pursue cultivation, to become something beyond mortality's constraints. The peaches represent this longing's answer. Yes, immortality is possible. No, it's not easy. Yes, it requires worthiness. Shi Huangmu guards the gate. She evaluates supplicants. She decides who crosses from temporary to eternal. She's been doing this since mountains first rose. She'll continue until they crumble. That's her role. Keeper of the threshold, guardian of transformation. The Queen Mother of the West enthroned on Kunlun, tending her impossible garden, waiting for the peaches to ripen. Again, the great Yu and the taming of the waters water covers everything. Rivers overflow, lakes expand, farmland disappears beneath flooding. People drown by thousands. Entire communities swept away. The deluge seems endless, unstoppable. This is China during the legendary Great Flood. Whether it happened historically, geologists still debate. Ancient texts describe it with certainty. Waters rising, civilization drowning. Someone has to stop it. First, they send Gun. He's dedicated, determined. His approach is simple: build dams, construct barriers, block the water, force it back. He works for years, builds massive earthworks, diverts rivers, creates levees. The water breaks through anyway. Floods continue. Gun fails. According to some texts, heaven executes him for his failure. Others say he simply dies, exhausted and broken. His son inherits the task. Yu approaches the problem differently. He studies the floods, observes their patterns, realizes something his father missed. You can't block water, you can only redirect it. He travels across the affected regions, walks the flooded plains, traces river courses, maps the terrain. Not from palace or office, he goes himself, wades through mud, examines every valley. He sees the solution, not barriers. Channels. Instead of fighting the water, guide it. Create pathways to the sea. Let the floods drain naturally through carefully designed routes. It's brilliant. It's patient. It requires understanding water's nature rather than opposing it. Very Taoist, though these events predate formal Taoism by centuries. Yu spends 13 years on this project. 13 years away from home, traveling across the realm, supervising construction. He passes his own house 3 times during these years. Hears his children inside, his wife calling his name. He doesn't stop, doesn't visit. The work is too important. The floods still threaten thousands of lives. This detail defines him, devoted to duty beyond personal desire. The flood control matters more than family reunions. It's held up as model of selfless service, also as tragedy. What kind of life demands such sacrifice? But Yu continues. He organizes workers, designs channels, redirects rivers. The Yangtze, the Yellow River, countless smaller waterways, all adjusted, guided, controlled. He doesn't just dig ditches. He creates a water management system. Sustainable infrastructure, something that will work after he's gone. The floods recede, slowly, over years, but they recede. Farmland reappears, communities rebuild, people stop drowning. Yu succeeds where his father failed, not through superior strength, through superior understanding. He becomes a hero, more than hero. Sage King. Emperor Shun, ruling at the time, recognizes Yu's achievement, abdicates in his favor. Yu becomes emperor, founds the Xia dynasty, China's first according to traditional chronology. Whether Xia actually existed historically remains uncertain. Archaeological evidence is ambiguous, but Yu's legend is certain: the flood tamer who became emperor, the engineer who saved civilization. His mythology contains interesting details. Some texts describe him using divine assistance. A yellow dragon appeared, gave him cosmic guidance. Mystical maps revealed optimal drainage routes. Other versions emphasize his human effort. No magic, no divine intervention, just intelligence, persistence, physical labor. Both versions exist. Different audiences prefer different interpretations. What matters is the core story. Water threatened everything. Yu saved it through understanding and patience. He represents a particular Chinese ideal: the administrator who serves, the technical expert who solves practical problems, the leader who sacrifices personal happiness for public good. Confucian texts love Yu. He's model ruler, dedicated, humble, effective. He didn't seek power, it came to him through merit. Taoist texts appreciate his water philosophy, going with flow, understanding nature, achieving goals through non-opposition. Taoist philosophical works use flooding as metaphor. Political disorder is flood. Good governance is proper drainage. Yu becomes the example. He didn't impose order through force. He channeled chaos through wisdom. The stories elaborate over dynasties. Later versions give him magical tools, a special measuring implement, a jade ruler that reveals terrain secrets. He visits mountains, meets river deities, negotiates with water spirits. The floods aren't just natural disaster, they're cosmic imbalance. Yu restores balance, physical and metaphysical. He divides the realm into 9 provinces, establishes administrative divisions that persist in concept for millennia. China's legendary geography begins with Yu's flood control tours. He's not just taming water, he's organizing space itself, bringing cosmic order to chaotic landscape. His exhaustion becomes legendary. Texts describe his appearance after 13 years. Gaunt, limping, hands calloused. His body shows the work's cost, but he persists. Duty before comfort, service before self. This sets a standard. Later emperors invoke Yu's memory. They're custodians of his achievement, responsible for maintaining the channels he dug, Flood control remains imperial responsibility throughout Chinese history. Emperors who let rivers overflow face criticism, rebellion, loss of mandate. Because you proved it's possible, proved that wise governance can control natural disasters. His success becomes burden for successors. They must match his standard, must continue his work. Yu's son, Qi, inherits the throne. This breaks the abdication pattern. Previous sage kings chose successors based on merit, not bloodline. With Qi, dynasty becomes hereditary. The Xia dynasty becomes family business. Some texts criticize this. Yu didn't want dynasty. He wanted continuation of merit-based succession. Others defend it. Qi was capable. The transition happened naturally. Either way, it marks a shift, from sage king selection to dynastic inheritance. Yu's flood control techniques influenced actual Chinese water management for centuries. Engineers studied the classical texts describing his methods, applied principles to their own projects. The Grand Canal, built much later, follows approaches attributed to Yu. Work with water, guide it, create sustainable channels. Even modern Chinese water projects invoke his memory. The Three Gorges Dam, controversial and massive, is sometimes compared to Yu's legendary works. Same challenge, same basic approach, different scale. Yu also became religious figure. Taoists venerate him. Temples dedicated to Yu exist across China. He's invoked for protection from floods, for agricultural success. He achieved immortality in some traditions. Transformed from mortal emperor to deified administrator, guardian of waterways, protector against flooding. The mythology surrounding Yu's effort reveals Chinese values clearly. Hard work over cleverness, patience over force, understanding over opposition. He didn't trick the water, didn't pray it away, didn't wait for divine rescue. He studied it, understood it, worked with its nature. Then he spent 13 years implementing the solution. That's the part that resonates. Not magic moment of inspiration, the years of labor afterward, the discipline to see it through. Yu becomes model for anyone facing overwhelming tasks, engineers, administrators, reformers, people trying to fix broken systems. The floods seem impossible, too much water, too widespread. But Yu shows it's manageable. Break it into components, address each section, persist despite setbacks. Eventually, even the Great Flood recedes. His 3 passes by his own house carry particular emotional weight. Imagine hearing your children knowing you could stop, see them, rest for a day, choosing duty instead. It's heartbreaking. It's admirable. It's terrible. Chinese tradition generally celebrates Yu's choice. He's model of service. But modern readings sometimes question it. What about his family? What about his children growing up without their father? Was the sacrifice necessary? Could he have balanced both? These questions aren't answered. The story doesn't need to answer them. It presents Yu's choice as given as necessary. Whether it actually was necessary is left to contemplation. Yu's legacy is water itself. Every controlled river, every irrigation channel, every drainage system, they trace back to him, his example, his techniques, his vision. China's agricultural success, the ability to feed massive populations, Yu made that possible. By understanding water, by working with it, by spending 13 years refusing to go home, the great Yu, standing in floodwater, mapping channels, taming chaos through patience, one drainage route at a time. The mandate of heaven, myths that justify rule. An emperor sits on a throne. How did he get there? This question haunts every dynasty. Power requires justification, especially in civilization that values harmony, order, proper hierarchy. You can't just say, I conquered you. Well, you can, but it doesn't create stable governance. You need something deeper, something cosmic. Enter Tianming, the mandate of heaven. It's political philosophy disguised as mythology, or mythology disguised as political philosophy. The lines blur deliberately. Here's the concept. Heaven, Tian, the cosmic order, chooses who should rule. It grants authority to virtuous leaders, withdraws it from corrupt ones. Emperors don't rule by force alone, they rule because heaven approves. Signs indicate heaven's favor. Prosperous harvests, peaceful borders, natural disasters are rare. Society functions smoothly. Signs indicate heaven's displeasure. Floods, droughts, earthquakes, rebellions, invasions, social chaos. The empire fractures. When disasters accumulate, when corruption spreads, when people suffer, heaven withdraws its mandate. Rebellion becomes justified. The current dynasty has lost heaven's approval. New rulers must emerge to restore cosmic order. This is brilliant political theory. It legitimizes authority while limiting it. Yes, the emperor is supreme, but only while maintaining virtue and good governance. Fail at either, and you're not just a bad emperor. You've lost cosmic approval. Revolution becomes moral imperative. The Zhou dynasty pioneered this concept. They overthrew the Shang dynasty around 1046 BCE, needed to justify regicide replacing an established ruling house. The mandate of heaven solved this problem. Shang's last emperor was corrupt, cruel. Heaven withdrew its favor. Zhou, virtuous and capable, received heaven's approval to replace them. It worked, not just as propaganda, as a governing philosophy that shaped Chinese political thought for millennia. Every subsequent dynasty invoked the mandate. Every rebellion claimed heaven's favor had shifted. The system created interesting dynamics. Emperors couldn't simply claim divine right. They had to demonstrate virtue, maintain order, respond to disasters appropriately. Natural disasters became political crises, not just because of physical damage, because they indicated possible loss of mandate. Emperors who failed to respond, who didn't provide relief, who didn't adjust policies, who didn't show appropriate concern, faced criticism. Rebellion, replacement. The people gained theoretical leverage. If the emperor fails to govern well, heaven approves our resistance. Of course, determining when the mandate actually shifted was subjective. Successful rebels proved heaven favored them through victory. Failed rebels were just bandits. History gets written by winners. They always discover that heaven was on their side. But the concept still mattered. It created expectations, standards for governance, accountability, at least in theory. Myths reinforced these ideas. Stories of virtuous emperors receiving heaven's blessing, tales of corrupt rulers facing divine punishment. Consider Emperor Jie, Xia dynasty's last ruler. According to legend, he was tyrannical, indulgent, ignored governance, wasted resources. Heaven sent signs, droughts, social unrest. He ignored them. Tang of Shang overthrew him, established new dynasty. Heaven's mandate had clearly transferred. Similar story with Shang's last emperor, Zhou. Different Zhou from Zhou dynasty, confusing but historically accurate. Legendary cruelty, torture, waste, corruption. King Wu of Zhou rebelled. Heaven supported him through signs and victories. New dynasty established. The pattern repeats through each dynastic transition. Han replacing Qin, Tang replacing Sui, Ming replacing Yuan. Same justification. Previous dynasty lost heaven's favor. New rulers restore cosmic order. Mythology made this concrete. Deities appeared to chosen rulers. Mystical signs indicated heaven's approval. Dragons, phoenixes, strange lights. Modern historians view these as later additions, stories created to justify political transitions. But their persistence matters. They shaped how Chinese civilization understood authority and legitimacy. Emperors presented themselves as heaven's representatives, not gods themselves. Chinese emperors generally didn't claim divinity, but intermediaries between heaven and earth, the son of heaven, Tianzi. This title carried responsibilities, ritual duties, moral obligations. The emperor maintained cosmic balance through correct behavior and governance. Failure to perform rituals properly risked cosmic disorder. The emperor's personal virtue directly affected the realm's stability. This created interesting pressure. Emperors needed to appear virtuous publicly. Confucian scholars advised them, criticized them, held them to standards. Bad emperors could rule temporarily, but historians would judge them. Heaven would eventually respond. The mandate concept influenced rebellion justifications throughout Chinese history. Peasant uprisings, military coups, foreign invasions all claimed heaven's favor. Some successfully, many didn't. The Mongol Yuan dynasty faced particular challenge: foreign conquerors, non-Chinese ethnic group. How could they claim heaven's mandate? They argued that heaven doesn't discriminate by ethnicity. Virtue matters, not origin. Mongol military prowess proved heaven's favor. It worked for a while, until Chinese resistance movements claimed heaven had shifted again. Ming dynasty emerged. Han Chinese rule restored. Heaven's mandate returns to the proper cultural group. Except Qing dynasty was also foreign. Manchu conquest of Ming. Same justification problem, same solution. Heaven chooses based on virtue and capability. Ethnicity is irrelevant. Qing ruled effectively for centuries under this banner, until they didn't. And revolutionaries claimed the mandate had expired, not just shifted to new dynasty. The entire imperial system had lost heaven's approval. Republic needed to replace monarchy. 20th century political movements still invoked mandate language. Communist revolution described itself as peasant uprising against corrupt ruling class. Heaven's mandate? Secularized. Historical dialectic replacing cosmic order. Same basic structure. Power requires justification beyond force. Claims to serve people, restore order, correct previous failures. The mythology embedded in mandate concept runs deep. It's not just political philosophy, it's cosmic narrative about virtue, order, and leadership. Stories teach emperors what heaven expects. Sage kings like Yao, Shun, and Yu set standards. Their governance brought prosperity, harmony, natural balance. Tyrants like Jie and Zhou brought chaos, natural disasters, social collapse. The mythology creates moral universe. Good governance aligns with cosmic order. Bad governance creates discord between heaven and earth. Emperors who understood this governed carefully. They knew their authority was conditional. Heaven gave it, heaven could withdraw it. This produced something unusual. Autocratic system with built-in theoretical limits. The emperor is supreme, except he's accountable to heaven. And heaven's judgment manifests through natural signs and popular resistance. It's not democracy, not even close. But it's not unlimited despotism either. The mandate concept shaped Chinese political culture profoundly, created expectations about governance, about rulers' responsibilities, about when resistance becomes justified. It turned rebellion from crime into cosmic necessity. If the emperor fails, heaven demands his replacement. Successful rebels aren't criminals. They're restoring heaven's proper order. This made Chinese dynastic cycles distinctive. Dynasty rises, governs well, declines, faces rebellion, falls. New dynasty emerges, claims mandate, cycle repeats, each transition justified through same mythology, heaven's approval shifting from one virtuous ruler to the next. The stories serving this system are too numerous to catalog fully, but they share elements. Virtuous ruler appears, often of humble origin, demonstrates capability, morality, heaven-blessed destiny. Current ruler shows corruption, cruelty, incompetence. Natural disasters intensify, society fractures. The virtuous challenger reluctantly accepts heaven's calling, leads resistance, defeats corrupt dynasty, establishes new order, restores harmony. Heaven's mandate confirmed through success. Then the cycle eventually begins again. It's mythological pattern that becomes historical pattern, or historical pattern that becomes mythological pattern. Either way, it persists across 3,000 years. The mandate of heaven, justifying rulers while limiting them, making power conditional on virtue, at least in theory. In practice, plenty of corrupt emperors ruled long lives. Plenty of virtuous rebels failed and died. But the concept mattered anyway. It shaped how people understood authority, created vocabulary for criticism and resistance. The mythology supporting it made these ideas concrete, memorable, transmissible across generations. Heaven watches, heaven judges, heaven's mandate can shift, rule virtuously, or risk cosmic disapproval. That's the story. The myth that became political philosophy that became recurring historical pattern. The mandate of heaven turning mythology into governance theory and governance theory into myth. Confucius, Laozi, and the myth of the sage Procrés. They probably never met. Confucius and Laozi, the two foundational figures of Chinese philosophy, like one advocating ritual, hierarchy, moral cultivation through social roles, the other preaching spontaneity, simplicity, alignment with nameless cosmic flow. They represent opposing approaches to existence, and there's a famous story about their meeting. Complete fiction, most likely, but beautiful fiction, the kind that reveals truth through fabrication. Confucius, already renowned teacher, seeks out Laozi, wants to learn about ancient rituals, proper conduct, the way of the former kings. He finds Laozi serving as archivist in the royal court, old, eccentric, unimpressed by Confucius's scholarly reputation. Their conversation goes poorly, from Confucius's perspective. Laozi criticizes his approach. "Stop chasing after ancient kings and their rules," he says. "Those men are dust now. Their bones are gone. Only their words remain, and you cling to them." He tells Confucius to abandon pride, abandon ritual obsession, abandon the whole project of moral education through tradition. The way that can be named is not the eternal way, Laozi says, or will say later in the text attributed to him. Confucius leaves frustrated, confused, tells his students, "I know birds can fly, fish can swim, beasts can run, but Laozi, he's like a dragon riding clouds. I can't understand him." The story appears in later texts elaborated and embellished. It probably never happened, but it captures something true. Two approaches to wisdom, meeting and finding no common ground, except they do share common ground. Both seek the way, Tao, the proper path through existence. They just define it differently. Confucius becomes mythologized even during his lifetime. Born in 551 BCE, died 479 BCE. Historical figure, definitely. But layers of legend accumulate quickly. Stories about his mother praying at sacred mountain for a son, portents at his birth, dragons appearing, spirits singing. He's born with strange physical features. Some texts say his head was oddly shaped, his body disproportionate, ugly, maybe, or just unusual. His father dies when he's young. His mother raises him in poverty. He works humble jobs while pursuing education obsessively. He masters 6 arts: ritual, music, archery, chariot riding, calligraphy, mathematics. Becomes renowned teacher while still young. But he wants political office, wants to implement his vision of virtuous governance. He travels across various states offering his services, mostly rejected. Rulers find his ideas impractical, his standards too demanding. He gathers students instead, teaches them what he couldn't convince rulers to implement. Returns to his home state of Lu. Spends final years teaching, editing classical texts, refining his philosophy. Dies relatively obscure. Just a teacher who tried and failed to reform government. Then he becomes immortal. Not literally. Confucius doesn't claim divine status, but immortal in influence. His students compile his teachings. The Analects, conversations and sayings, not systematic philosophy. Fragments, responses, contextual wisdom. It becomes one of Chinese civilization's foundational texts. Later generations elevate Confucius further. He becomes semi-divine, temples dedicated to him across China, official sacrifices, state sponsorship. He's the supreme sage, the exemplary teacher, the uncrowned king. Stories elaborate his virtue. He was filial, respectful, studious, morally impeccable. His every action demonstrated principle. This is mythology in process. Historical person becoming cultural archetype. Laozi's mythology works differently. We don't even know if he existed. The text attributed to him, Tao Te Ching, classic of the way and virtue, might have been compiled from multiple sources or written by one person whose identity is lost. The name Laozi means old master. Could be title, not personal name. But tradition creates biography anyway. He's born old, fully white-bearded, after gestating in his mother's womb for decades. Or centuries, depending on version. He serves as archivist, keeper of imperial library, studies ancient wisdom, achieves understanding beyond words. Then he grows disgusted with civilization's corruption, decides to leave, rides westward on an ox, heading toward the wilderness beyond China's borders. At the border pass, the gate guard recognizes him. You're leaving? Please, write down your wisdom before you go. Don't let it vanish with you. Laozi agrees. Sits down, writes 5,000 characters. The Tao Te Ching. Hands it over, continues riding west, disappears into legend. This story is definitely mythological. No historical evidence supports it. But it's perfect mythology, the sage who rejects civilization entirely, who writes reluctantly only when pressed, whose wisdom fits in 5,000 characters, then vanishes, leaving only words behind. The Tao Te Ching becomes foundational text for Taoism, but it's cryptic, paradoxical, deliberately obscure. The way that can be spoken is not the eternal way. That's the opening line. Everything afterward is allegedly about something that can't be spoken. It's frustrating, beautiful, endlessly interpretable. Laozi becomes deified in religious Taoism, not just philosopher, an immortal, a deity, one of the 3 pure ones, highest Taoist divinities. He appears to devotees in visions, offers guidance, bestows magical texts, from historical question mark to cosmic god. That's quite a journey. Confucius and Laozi represent China's 2 philosophical poles: social order versus natural spontaneity, ritual versus simplicity, education versus intuition. Their mythological meeting forces the contradiction into dialogue and produces no resolution. They disagree, part ways, continue separate traditions. Chinese civilization holds both simultaneously: Confucian in governance and social relations, Taoist in private life and spiritual seeking, not contradiction. Complementary approaches. You serve society through Confucian principles. You nurture inner life through Taoist practice. The mythology of both sages supports this balance. Confucius, the devoted teacher trying to reform society; Laozi, the hermit abandoning society for the way. Both valuable, both necessary. Later traditions add to both mythologies. Confucius gains supernatural knowledge in some texts. He can predict futures, understands cosmic patterns. Laozi travels to India, becomes Buddha, or teaches Buddha. Different versions exist. This is tradition claiming credit, establishing primacy. Our sage taught yours. Historical accuracy isn't the point. Cultural meaning is. The sage as archetype matters more than the sage as person. Confucius represents dedication to moral education and social improvement. Laozi represents rejection of conventional wisdom and alignment with mysterious cosmic principles. Both are mythological figures now. Even if one or both existed historically, their teachings become inseparable from their legendary biographies. The wisdom and the mythology reinforce each other. Students studying Confucius's Analects also learn stories about his poverty, his persistence, his moral perfection. The text and the legend merge. Readers of Tao Te Ching imagine Laozi riding westward on his ox, the mysterious text from a mysterious sage. This is how philosophy becomes mythology, how ideas become stories, how abstract principles get humanized through legendary exemplars. Confucius and Laozi aren't just thinkers, they're cultural heroes, symbolic figures representing entire worldviews. Their mythological meeting, which never happened, becomes more true than historical fact, because it captures the tension between their approaches, the structured versus the spontaneous, the social versus the solitary, the named way versus the nameless way. China holds both, honors both, needs both. That's the myth's real lesson. Not that they met, that they could coexist, different paths up the same mountain or different mountains entirely. Either way, both sages reached somewhere worth remembering, worth mythologizing, worth preserving in story, even when history can't confirm them. Ghost festivals, hungry spirits, and ancestor myths. The seventh lunar month arrives. Gates between worlds crack open, the dead return. Not dramatically, not violently. They just drift through. Ghosts of ancestors, forgotten spirits, hungry souls without family to remember them. The Ghost Festival. Zhongyuanjie. It's one of Chinese culture's most significant observances, part Taoist, part Buddhist, thoroughly mixed with folk tradition. The mythology surrounding it reveals Chinese cosmology's unique approach to death and afterlife. First, understand that death isn't final. It's transformation, transition to different realm. The dead still exist, still have needs, still interact with the living. Ancestors require attention, regular offerings, respect, remembrance. Families maintain shrines, burn incense, provide food during festivals. This isn't metaphorical. Ancestors actually consume these offerings, spirit versions anyway. Failure to honor ancestors brings consequences. Neglected spirits become hungry ghosts, wandering, desperate, unable to sustain themselves. They're not evil, just abandoned, forgotten. The Ghost Festival addresses this problem. 1 month when the boundary between realms thins, spirits can cross over more easily. Families prepare offerings for ancestors specifically, but also for unknown ghosts. Spirits without families, without anyone to remember them. Food, paper money, incense laid out publicly. Any wandering spirit can partake. It's remarkable compassion built into cosmology. Care even for ghosts nobody knows. Buddhist influence is clear. The festival coincides with Ulambana, celebrating Mulian saving his mother from hungry ghost realm. Mulian was a monk, achieved enlightenment, gained supernatural vision, used it to check on his deceased parents, found his father in heaven, good man, good karma, good afterlife, found his mother in hungry ghost realm, terrible suffering. She was greedy during life, selfish. Now she's starving, unable to eat. Mulian tries to send her food. It bursts into flames before reaching her mouth. He begs Buddha for help. Buddha explains, your virtue alone isn't enough. On the 15th day of 7th month, make offerings to monks. The collective merit will free her. Mulian does this. His mother is released from hungry ghost realm. The practice spreads, offering to monks on this date, making merit for deceased parents, helping ancestors escape suffering. Taoist tradition adds its own layer. The 7th month is when heavenly bureaucracy reviews cases. Judges of the underworld examine records, determine punishments and rewards. Good time to make offerings, influence the proceedings, help ancestors receive better treatment. Folk practice blends everything together: Buddhist compassion, Taoist bureaucracy, Confucian filial piety. The result is complex festival with multiple purposes: honor ancestors, feed hungry ghosts, earn merit for deceased relatives, protect living family from wandering spirits. Because not all ghosts are benign. Some are bitter, vengeful, spirits who perished unjustly, violently. They might cause trouble if not appeased. Offerings serve as protection. Feeding potentially angry ghosts prevents their interference. 7th month becomes cautious time, Avoid unnecessary risks. Don't swim. Water ghosts might drag you down. Don't stay out late. Don't whistle at night, might attract spirits. Get married in the 6th or 8th month instead. 7th month weddings invite bad luck. The mythology supporting these practices is extensive. Countless ghost stories, cautionary tales, legends about specific spirits. There's the category of yuan, ghosts who died unjustly. They can't rest until their grievance is addressed. There are gui hun, spirits of those who died far from home, without proper burial, without family to honor them. There are shui gui, water ghosts, drowned spirits who lure others into drowning, hoping to replace themselves and reincarnate. Each category requires different handling, different offerings, different precautions. Chinese ghost stories are their own genre. Strange Tales from a Chinese Studio, collection of supernatural narratives, ghosts falling in love with mortals, fox spirits in disguise, vengeful dead seeking justice. These aren't just entertainment, they're instruction in cosmological reality. The dead exist, they interact with living. Understanding this helps navigate existence safely. Ancestral veneration deserves particular attention. It's foundational to Chinese culture. Families maintain genealogies spanning generations. Ancestor tablets record names, dates, relationships. During festivals, families gather at graves, clean the site, make offerings, report major family events. Grandfather, your great-grandson got married. Grandmother, we're moving to new city. Keeping ancestors informed, including them in family continuity. This practice predates written history. Oracle bones from Shang dynasty show ancestor worship already formalized. Divination, asking deceased kings for guidance. The mythology treats ancestors as active participants in family welfare. They can bless descendants, or curse them if neglected. Good fortune often attributed to ancestral blessing. Bad fortune might mean someone's not properly honoring their dead. This creates interesting pressure. Maintain relationships with people you never met, great-great-grandparents whose names you barely know. But the system persists because it works. Not metaphysically, who knows? Socially, it creates continuity, makes current generation responsible to past and future both, prevents individual isolation. You're not just yourself, you're link in chain. Ancestors before, descendants after. That identity brings obligations, also belonging. The mythology reinforces this. Stories about ancestors appearing in dreams, warning of danger, offering advice, expressing approval or disapproval of family decisions. These dreams are taken seriously, not dismissed as psychology, actual communication from deceased relatives. Modern practice varies. Urban families might maintain simplified traditions, but the underlying concepts persist. Even people who don't believe in literal ghosts often participate in festivals. Cultural identity, respect for tradition, connection to family history. The Ghost Festival remains widely observed in China, Taiwan, throughout diaspora communities. Streets fill with offerings, incense smoke everywhere, paper money burned at intersections sending wealth to the afterlife, elaborate meals laid out for no visible diners, families eating together with empty chairs for deceased members. It's beautiful, strange, deeply meaningful. The mythology says, death doesn't sever connection. The dead remain part of family. They need care, like living relatives need care. Neglecting them is moral failure. Cruelty, abandonment. So feed them. Remember them, tell their stories, make offerings during festivals. Keep them included in family life. This isn't superstition to believers. It's basic decency. Your grandmother fed you for years. Now you feed her spirit. Your ancestors made sacrifices so you could exist. You honor those sacrifices through remembrance. The Ghost Festival institutionalizes this, makes care for the dead communal responsibility, not just your family's ghosts. All ghosts. Anyone's ancestors might be wandering, hungry, forgotten. Feed them anyway. Show compassion even to unknown spirits. That's the festival's deepest teaching. Care extends beyond personal relationships. The dead, like the living, deserve kindness, even if nobody remembers their names. Myth in ink and opera, from scrolls to screens. A stage transforms into heaven. Acrobats in elaborate costumes flip through air, musicians pound drums, clash cymbals, an actor in monkey makeup somersaults across the platform wielding a staff. Sun Wukong, the Monkey King, brought to life through Peking opera. This is how Chinese mythology survives, not just in ancient texts. In performance, visual art, popular culture, the myths adapt to every medium. Scroll paintings during Song Dynasty, opera performances in Ming, novels in Qing, films in 20th century, television series, animated features, video games now. Each generation reimagines the stories, adds details, shifts emphasis, makes myths speak to contemporary concerns. Start with visual art. Chinese painting traditions developed sophisticated methods for depicting mythological scenes. Gu Kaiji, 4th century artist, painted Nüwa and Fuxi, their serpent bodies intertwined, human torsos noble and graceful. The image becomes iconic, copied, reinterpreted, referenced for centuries. Later artists tackled different myths. Zhang Zeduan's famous scroll includes small mythological references hidden among everyday scenes, deities walking among mortals unnoticed. Wu Daozi specialized in religious murals, Buddhist and Taoist deities. His wall paintings in temples drew pilgrims specifically to see them. Mythology provided endless subject matter, 8 immortals frequently depicted, each with their symbolic object, their distinctive appearance. Artists competed to capture personality through visual detail. Lu Dongbin's sword, He Shanggu's lotus, Iron Crutch Li's gourd, these images became standardized. Anyone seeing them knew immediately which immortal was represented. Woodblock printing revolutionized mythological art's distribution. Illustrated texts became accessible. Popular novels included visual depictions. Journey to the West, published during Ming Dynasty, came with illustrations. Readers could see Sun Wukong's battles, Pigsy's gluttony, the pilgrim's adventures. The visual tradition influenced the narrative tradition and vice versa. Artists and writers collaborated, creating unified mythological iconography. Opera deserves particular attention. Chinese opera synthesized mythology with music, acrobatics, stylized movement, elaborate costumes. Different regional styles emerged. Peking opera became most famous, but Kungku, Cantonese opera, many local variations existed. All drew heavily on mythology. The stories were known, beloved, perfect for theatrical adaptation. White Snake Legend became popular opera. The flooding of Golden Mountain scene where Bai Sujin battles Fa Hai, pure spectacle. Acrobats representing water, warriors clashing, dramatic singing. Audiences knew the story already, came to see particular performers' interpretation, how they'd execute the famous scenes. Opera training was rigorous. Students began young, mastered specific role types. Dan roles, female, Sheng roles, male, Jing roles, painted face characters, Cho roles, clowns. Sun Wukong required monkey role training, distinct movement style, acrobatic skills, specific vocal techniques. Performers specialized, became famous for particular characters. Audiences would travel to see renowned Monkey King performer. The mythology stayed alive through these performances. Each generation of actors passed down interpretations, techniques, innovations, but they also adapted, changed emphasis, added political commentary, contemporary references. During Qing Dynasty, opera performances satirized government through mythological allegory. The Jade Emperor's heavenly bureaucracy mirrored imperial bureaucracy. Audiences understood the criticism. Officials did too. Performers sometimes faced consequences. Mythology provided safe distance. Can't criticize emperor directly, but can show how Sun Wukong rebelled against unjust heavenly authority. Message received. Literature transformed mythology extensively. 4 great classical novels of Chinese literature, 3 involve mythology prominently. Journey to the West, obviously. Entirely mythological narrative. Investiture of the Gods tells of Shangzhou transition. Historical events mixed with elaborate mythological framework. Gods battling, mortals becoming deities, cosmic warfare. Water Margin, while focused on outlaws, includes mythological elements. The 108 bandits are actually stars descended from heaven. These novels were read aloud in tea houses. Professional storytellers performed them over weeks, months, building audiences, adding dramatic flourishes. The oral and written traditions influenced each other. Storytellers popularized the novels. Novelists incorporated storytelling techniques. Mythology became entertainment but retained religious and philosophical significance. Modern era brought new media. Early Chinese cinema immediately adapted mythological stories. Silent films of 1920s included Journey to the West scenes. Technical limitations didn't stop filmmakers from attempting supernatural effects. As technology improved, so did adaptations. Color films, elaborate sets, special effects. The 1960s and 70s saw Shaw Brothers Studio produce numerous mythology-based films. Colorful, dramatic, often violent reinterpretations. Hong Kong cinema embraced mythological martial arts, combining action choreography with supernatural elements. Television followed. Long form series could develop mythological narratives more fully. 1986, Journey to the West, television adaptation became culturally significant, watched by hundreds of millions. Its theme song instantly recognizable. The series shaped how entire generation visualized the mythology. Its Monkey King became the Monkey King for many viewers. Later adaptations tried to distinguish themselves, different interpretations, different emphasis, darker, more psychological, or more comedic, or more romantic. Each generation gets the mythology it needs or wants, or deserves. Video games entered the field. Chinese game developers creating mythologically based content. Journey to the West inspired countless games. Players could be Sun Wukong, fighting through heavenly armies, or Nezha riding windfire wheels, wielding fire-tipped mythology. Participatory storytelling. Western audiences discovered Chinese mythology through various routes. Kung fu films of the 1970s. Animated features like Disney's Mulan, though Mulan is folktale, not mythology. But the confusion is telling. Western audiences often lumped all Chinese traditional stories together. Recent years have seen more authentic adaptations reaching global audiences. Films like Nüwa, animated feature about the rebellious child god, achieving massive commercial success. The mythology proves adaptable to animation. Fantastical elements that would cost millions in live-action work, beautifully in animated form. Each medium adds something. Opera adds music, physical virtuosity. Painting adds visual symbolism. Novels add psychological depth. Film adds cinematographic spectacle. Games add interactivity. The myths absorb all of it. They're flexible enough to work across formats, sturdy enough to maintain core meaning. White Snake Legend exists as opera, novel, film, animated series, video game. Each version emphasizes different aspects. Some focus on romance, others on Buddhist philosophy, some on spectacular action sequences. All are legitimate interpretations. The story accommodates them. This adaptability is mythology's strength. The tales aren't fixed. They're living tradition, evolving with each retelling. Contemporary Chinese artists continue this process. Graphic novels reimagining classic myths, digital art depicting traditional deities in modern style. The mythology enters new contexts, environmental themes added to Nüwa's creation story, feminist readings of Queen Mother of the West. None of this violates the tradition. It extends it, keeps it relevant, meaningful, alive. Because mythology dies when it becomes museum piece, when it's preserved but not adapted. Chinese mythology avoids this fate by accepting transformation. The stories change because people keep engaging with them. Each new medium, each new interpretation, each generation's fresh reading all contribute to ongoing vitality. The myths that began as shamanic visions, ritual performances, cosmic explanations now exist as blockbuster films, best-selling novels, viral social media content. Same stories, different forms. Still teaching, still entertaining, still connecting people to traditions spanning millennia. That's mythology's victory, not preservation, evolution. The tales persist by changing, like the Tao itself. Constant through transformation. The eternal return, why Chinese mythology still lives on. Picture a child in modern Beijing, smartphone in hand, designer clothes, access to global culture, international media, cutting-edge technology. She watches an animated series about Nezha, the rebellious child god, born from lotus flower, fighting dragons, defying his father, sacrificing himself to save his family. She's captivated. Same story that captivated children 300 years ago. 500, 1,000. Chinese mythology persists because it addresses something timeless. Not ancient, timeless. Human questions, human struggles, human hopes. The myths began as explanations. Why does the sky exist? Why do floods happen? Why do we die? Pangu answered the first. You answered the second. Ghost festivals addressed the third. But they became more than explanations. They became narratives about power, resistance, transformation, meaning. They're simultaneously philosophical treatises and thrilling adventures, moral instruction and pure entertainment. This versatility keeps them alive. Confucian scholars found ethical lessons in mythological tales. Taoists discovered cosmological principles. Buddhists saw karma and enlightenment. Common people just enjoyed good stories. Everyone found something useful. That's mythology's genius. Multiple layers of meaning, accessible at different levels. A child hears about Sun Wukong and thinks, cool monkey warrior who fights gods. A teenager reads Journey to the West and thinks, rebellion against authority seeking identity. An adult understands discipline over chaos, enlightenment through struggle, balance between freedom and responsibility. A scholar analyzes Taoist Buddhist synthesis, critique of bureaucratic rigidity, meditation on the nature of power. Same story, different revelations depending on who's engaging with it. Chinese mythology never became dogma, never calcified into rigid orthodoxy. Too many traditions contributed, too many interpretations coexisted. Taoism and Buddhism and Confucianism and folk religion all mixed together, created rich, contradictory, endlessly fascinating narrative universe. This prevented mythology from dying. When it's doctrine, questioning it becomes heresy. When it's story, questioning it becomes interpretation. Chinese myths invited interpretation, encouraged adaptation, thrived on contradiction. The Jade Emperor is both supreme deity and bureaucratic fool. Heaven is both cosmic order and corrupt system. Immortals are both enlightened sages and drunken tricksters. These contradictions aren't flaws, they're features. They make the mythology flexible enough to accommodate different perspectives. Political dimension matters too. Mythology became tool for commentary, criticism, resistance. Can't directly challenge emperor, tell story about heaven's bureaucracy. Can't openly discuss corruption, show celestial officials accepting bribes. Mythology provided safe space for dangerous ideas. But it also reinforced authority. Mandate of heaven justified dynasties. Confucian elements supported social hierarchy. Same mythology, serving opposite purposes. That's possible because stories are interpretable. They mean what readers make them mean, what historical moment requires them to mean. Modern China's relationship with traditional mythology is complex. Communist revolution initially rejected traditional culture as feudal superstition. Temples destroyed, texts banned, opera performances curtailed, but mythology survived anyway. Too deeply embedded in culture, too useful for creating cultural identity. Eventually, even revolutionary government recognized value. Heritage, soft power, tourism revenue, traditional stories were rehabilitated, carefully, with proper political framing. Sun Wukong became revolutionary hero, rebel against divine authority, obviously proto-communist. Journey to the West, allegory about serving the people, overcoming obstacles through collective effort. The reinterpretation is laughable to some. Natural evolution to others. Mythology absorbs it like it absorbed everything else. Contemporary Chinese culture embraces traditional mythology enthusiastically. Blockbuster films, popular novels, video games, tourist sites. Nüwa 2019 became one of highest-grossing Chinese films ever. The Monkey King appears everywhere. White Snake legend keeps getting adapted. Young people know these stories. Maybe not from temples or classical texts, from movies, from games, from pop culture, but they know them. The myths persist. Western audiences increasingly engage with Chinese mythology too, not just as exotic curiosity, as compelling storytelling. Netflix adaptations, international co-productions, translated novels. The mythology crosses borders because the themes are universal: rebellion against unjust authority, search for meaning, struggle between order and chaos, love transcending boundaries. These aren't uniquely Chinese concerns, they're human concerns. Chinese mythology addresses them through specific cultural lens, but the underlying questions resonate across cultures. That's why mythology survives 3,000 years, not because it's old, because it's relevant. Every generation faces floods, literal or metaphorical. Yu's solution remains instructive. Understand the problem, work with natural forces, persist through difficulty. Every generation produces misfits and rebels. Sun Wukong shows rebellion's cost and glory, both. Every generation watches systems claim to be just while practicing injustice. Zhang Kui reminds us that rejection isn't final verdict. The eight immortals prove multiple paths to transcendence exist. The White Snake shows love's terrible beauty. These aren't ancient lessons, they're permanent lessons, disguised as old stories. The mythology's flexibility allows continuous reinterpretation. Each era adds meaning, adjusts emphasis, finds new relevance. Nothing is fixed except the core narratives. How those narratives are understood changes constantly. That's evolution, not corruption. Living tradition rather than dead letter. Compare Chinese mythology to dead mythological systems. Norse myths, for instance. Fascinating, dramatic, but no longer living tradition. Nobody worships Odin anymore. Norse myths are studied, adapted, referenced, but they're museum pieces. Chinese mythology still functions, temples still honor deities, festivals still celebrate mythological events. People still pray to Guanyin, burn offerings during Ghost Festival, visit temple during Lunar New Year. The mythology remains embedded in living culture, not just historical interest, active practice. This integration is mythology's secret to survival. It's not separate from daily life. It's woven through festivals, art, language, values. Chinese people don't need to study mythology like a foreign subject. They grow up breathing it. Idioms reference mythological stories. Architecture incorporates mythological symbols. Holiday traditions enact mythological principles. The mythology is ambient, always present, usually unnoticed. Until you look, and suddenly it's everywhere. This makes it remarkably resilient, can't be destroyed because it's not centralized, can't be forgotten because it's not optional knowledge. It's cultural infrastructure, invisible but essential. Future of Chinese mythology? Probably continued evolution. More adaptations, new media, fresh interpretations. Inevitable debates about authenticity, tradition, proper understanding. Same debates that have occurred for centuries. And the mythology will absorb those debates too. Add them to its accumulated layers. Because mythology isn't fixed thing to be preserved. It's living process. Dynamic interaction between past narratives and present concerns. The stories change by staying the same, or stay the same by changing. Either way, they persist. From Pangu splitting chaos to Nüwa fighting dragons on movie screens. From oracle bone divinations to social media discussions of mythological symbolism, 3,000 years, hundreds of dynasties, revolutions, transformations. The mythology survives, not through museum preservation, through constant reinvention. The child watching Nüwa on her smartphone isn't betraying tradition, she's continuing it, experiencing the eternal return. The cycle that began when shamans first told stories around fires. Those stories became poems, became paintings, became operas, became films, became digital content, but remained stories, remained mythology, addressing the permanent questions through evolving answers. That's why Chinese mythology still lives, not because it's old, because it's new. Every time someone engages with it, every retelling, every interpretation, every child discovering Sun Wukong for the first time. The mythology lives in those moments, in the connection between ancient narrative and contemporary consciousness. From Pangu to the mandate of heaven and beyond, the stories continue, the cycle continues, the eternal return. Again,